All right, we'd like to welcome you to the Provo Municipal Council work meeting. It is January 14th and it is 2:02 p.m. The elected officials we have today with us are Councillor Becky Bogdan, Councillor George Handley, Councillor Gary Garrett, Councillor Catrice McKay, Councillor Rachel Whipple, Councillor Travis Hoban, and Councillor Craig Christensen. Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited in the council may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. When speaking, please be sure to use a microphone so the record is clear and those attending virtually can hear you. Please also be sure to limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a side conversation, please step out of the work meeting room. It is proposed that we approve the following minutes. And Kevin, you've done an amazing job here. And Craig, he wants you to know that he's been using AI. Whoa. April 30th, 2024 work meeting, June 4th, 2024 work meeting, June 11th, 2024 work meeting, June 18th, 2024 work meeting, July 16th, 2024 work meeting, July 23rd, 2024 joint meeting with Provo Library Board, August 6th, 2024 work meeting, August 13th, 2024 truth and taxation hearing, September 3rd, 2024 work meeting, September 17th, 2024 work meeting, September 17th, 2024 work council meeting, October 1st, 2024 work meeting, December 17th, 2024 work meeting, and January 7th, 2025 budget priorities meeting. Are there any objections or requested changes?
Usually we don't cover this many in one.
I know, no, that's why I mentioned it.
There was a backlog.
Did you read that a little faster?
Oh. Yeah. So I did not read all of the minutes. I read some of them. I would quibble with some of the word choices, but not enough to change anything. So thank you so much.
And reject any meeting you want, and I'll happily reflect what the council wants to do.
No, I think you did a really good job. Thank you.
Excellent.
Seeing no objection, I declare the minutes approved by unanimous consent. All right, our first item of business is a presentation regarding the 2025 Utah State Legislative Session. This is presented by Malia Daly and Michael Sanders, our policy analysts.
Okay, we're both gonna kind of speak to just different parts of this. So the legislative session starts on Tuesday, the 21st, runs through March 7th. And just like last year, this is just a guide. It's pretty similar to last year's session guide, just to kind of give you some helpful links here at the top, just to help you navigate the legislative session, their website. So we also just wanted to talk this year. In years past, I just sent a weekly update on Mondays, just kind of like, here's 3 bills we're watching, here's what ULCT said about it, and that was kind of it, which I think is helpful and was good information. This year, Michael and I have decided to get a little bit more information and try and empower you and get you to be able to be more involved as much as you want. So we have created kind of our own little bill tracker. A lot of it just follows the same bill tracker that ULCT has and Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is similar to MAG, but they have a tracker that tracks housing and transportation bills that are very similar to what MAG also tracks. MAG usually does a post-legislative session kind of update and stuff, but as far as in session, they don't have an active tracker usually. So I follow Wasatch Front. But we kind of have put together our own bill tracker, which we'll go over in a second, which will just have the bill number, ULCT's position on it, which we're just going to take from their official position that they vote on during LPC. And then also we will have a way for the council to kind of have a position on it, which is Michael's going to go over that process and how we're going to do that. And what that looks like as far as action items and coordinating with the administration and ULCT on that as needed or wanted. And then also something we're going to do as staff, and this is something we're going to try out this year, and hopefully it's helpful to not just the council, but the city as a whole, is tracking bills, any bills that might affect us fiscally or code change wise, things that we might have to update our code on. So there are a couple bills right now that we're tracking that have to do with things that Public Works might have to address, but maybe like we're not gonna have a position on that, but they might have to kind of relook at how a board is made up or how they kind of report finances. So we're gonna be tracking all of that too and send out this tracker weekly, send it to the administration just to say, hey, here's some things we've kind of noticed budget wise or code change wise that we might want to keep an eye on. We're not going to take a position or send an email or anything on it, but just as a heads up, if they want to then talk to Parks and Rec or Public Works or planning and say, hey, do you guys want to say anything or speak to this on anything? Just as a city, so we're well informed and kind of more involved, other than at the end of the session saying, by the way, by May 1st, we have to change our code in this 18 different ways. So we're kind of a little bit more proactive and on top of things, if anything. Kevin, can you go to the next page? This is just of this document, yeah. This is just, you can also create your own bill tracker on the Utah legislature's website. It is pretty helpful and we have our own little trackers that we've made there, but we will also send out our own tracker on Mondays that are just one specific to Provo. But if you have other bills that you want to look at, go for it. And then these are just links to ULCT and Wasatch Front's bill trackers. ULCT's for this year isn't quite live yet, but in LPC yesterday they are working on it and we'll post it soon. Wasatch Front's is live, so they have those up. And then we also put the governor's budget recommendations and his budget up. The legislature does usually make some pretty big changes to that, but this is just the starting point for the budget this year, so that's good to look at. There's a lot of funding there for housing and homelessness that's different than last year. Just some different funding structures there. And then this is just a link that Michael and we subscribe to in our office, which is the Utah Policy Daily Newsletter. They just pull headlines, but then also during the legislative session, it's super helpful because they just pull the calendars from the legislative website and say, here's all the committee meetings meeting today. So you can, it's just a quick place to look at that list all at once. So we're going to go over our bill tracker, but first, Michael, if you can go back to the previous page, Kevin, Michael's going to review how to kind of get involved in bill advocacy or get a bill on the bill tracker or anything like that.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Malia. So the legislative session is super duper short. So just like the poet Vanilla Ice says, we need to be quick and nimble. So the way that we'd like to be quick and nimble is we developed a kind of like a standard operating procedure that we'd like the council to follow if they hear something about a bill, because we all need to have a kind of unified front on the process on how we're doing it, because we don't want to get anything to fall through the cracks and for any one item to take too long. Because if we learn about it in February, by the time we debate over email on what we're going to do for a week or two, and then we're going to talk about it in a work session, by then there's 2 weeks left in the session and the decision's probably already been made on Capitol Hill about what they're going to do. So just real quickly, I'll just go over what we are requesting that the council does if there is any type of bill not listed in the bill tracker that we send out, or that is listed in the bill tracker that we send out, that you would like to take action on. So step one, if you notice a bill either in the tracker or you hear from a constituent or you see on the news that you're interested in and think it may affect Provo in some way, we need you guys to email the council staff, Justin, Willie, and I, and just tell us the bill, or and all of the counselors. Yes, every single one of the counselors. So we're all in the same field with the bill number, your position on the bill, meaning I love it, I hate it, or I don't know, I just want to know more about it, and your reasons for flagging it. So that could be like, oh, I'm super passionate about billboards possibly going through Provo Canyon, or dog regulations, or whatever it may be. Or I heard from a constituent about this and I'm concerned. So once we receive that, we'll put it onto the tracker. We'll then reply to your email with some background information on the bill. So we'll do some research on it. We'll kind of look at how it may affect our code or the budget, kind of all around, how is this gonna affect us, and then some potential options for action. And then the requester could kind of take and digest that information that we sent. And again, reply all on the email chain to indicate their desired action. And just as a note, when it comes to legislative advocacy, counselors, it's kind of a choose your own adventure game. You can either act as an individual, you could act as like a group of counselors, or you could act as the full council. So obviously, kind of what you choose to do on that depends on what the bill is, what your, like if you're super passionate about it, if it's the hill you want to die on, or it really depends, I suppose. But just, it's really important that you reply to all the recipients of the email on what you want to do so we can get going on it as fast as possible. And then once we come to a decision on that, the staff will just provide the necessary support to the requester. We'll update the tracker and then just inform the council as a whole on any developments on that bill and the action that was requested. Any questions?
Counselor Whipple.
Okay, so I've got an example. We've got SB 83 that's going to require law enforcement agencies to create a new policy related to protective orders. Is that the kind of thing that we want to be flagging because
Yeah.
it would be affected?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to flag that one.
Yeah, all right, so, yeah, we're really looking at anything, like I said, specifically, like. Here, can you pull up the track really quick, Kevin?
Yeah.
We're, as far as things flagging, we're flagging things that we're like, oh, the council's priority is housing and zoning and stuff like that, so we're flagging those automatically. And then we're also gonna go through, kind of waiting for more bills to get numbered. We're also gonna start and going flag and say, this has to do with police code change like that, or this
Right.
is going to be a budget effect for this, or this is going to be additional reporting for the water board that they have to,
Okay.
or the airport board, or something like that. That's more like, I don't think we're gonna like write a letter about reporting requirements for the airport board, but I think it's just good that as a city, we have like a central place where it's like, here's everything updating all of our code, and since we're the legislative body, I think it would be good for us to kind of have all of that.
Yeah, I don't know if this one will require a code change, but it will require a policy. So that
Yeah.
might just be an administrative action.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. Another note, you can see here on our tracker, ULCT position. So like Michael said, when we say, here's some possible action you can take, I think Isaac has mentioned this before about the idea of political capital and strength in numbers. So that is definitely a thing up on the up there at the legislature. If we just have like, well, I want, like, for example, a bill came out yesterday that if a trespasser comes on your property and your dog hurts them, the dog and you are not liable, the trespasser is, whatever. If you like really care a lot about that bill, like, and you as an individual counselor want to do that, that's fine. Just know that we're using now our political capital to talk about that instead of maybe something else, like, for example, the ADU citywide bill. Maybe we have a lot more that we want to use on that. We want to align with ULCT, maybe on a position with that. So just, you guys, we can do whatever we want and speak to whatever we want. It's exciting. I would love to just talk about everything. That would be great. But that's just kind of something to keep in mind as we go through this. And ULCT is really good about trying to keep informed. All of its members are informed, and their tracker is also really helpful. And they have a bunch of designations like watching, holding, don't contact yet. So we're going to make sure that that is current on here as well. So that way, and maybe we want to go against ULCT. That's something I think needs to be like a conscious decision that we're really thinking about and making. So anyway, we just want to keep everyone super informed, and like bills like that, if you're thinking of them, then we can add that here and kind of just
Okay.
make sure it's flagged.
Counselor Bogdan.
Well, are we tracking Lisa's bill? The Lisa.
Which one?
I don't know which.
Yeah, so
household
her
it is.
bill currently is not numbered because Representative Thurston had to file it because she's not sworn in yet. So it's filed, and I forget the title.
It's
that
like the most generic name ever. It's called like municipal
Code
ordinance
amendments.
amendments or something like
It's
that.
like-
Calling it the Provo bill.
Yeah, so once she gets sworn in, I'm sure they'll swap sponsors and then it'll become numbered under her name, but it's not up yet. But we'll make sure to have that on here and keep that current because that is kind of like our bill that she's running for us. So it'd be good if we could speak to that in committee and then.
That's one that we would like you guys to participate in.
So, but any other kind of questions on this?
Councilor Garrett.
It would be helpful also if you're in coordination with the ULCT, sometimes they do a blast
Yeah.
to local officials, that it's time to text or email
Mhm.
a representative relative to a bill.
Yeah,
And to get that word so that we know when to
definitely. Yeah.
chime in on something.
Yeah, we go to LPCs and then we're on all of those emails. But as I think Patrice and Gary, you're the LPC, are voting members from the council. So if you know of things or you're in subgroups there, to just let us know, but we will definitely keep that posted as well and get those updates out.
And then so next Wednesday is the officials day at the,
Yeah, the 22nd, local officials day that ULCT sponsors.
okay. And do we have to tell someone if we want to go or? can we just
Jennifer in
go?
our office can coordinate that
Okay.
and make sure that you're registered and
Okay.
all of that is arranged.
She would sound like bringing permission.
Yeah, she was just asking me, I think because she was gonna maybe invite one of the youth council.
Yeah, there's two
There's
youth
two-
council members that want to
So
go.
I'm not able to go, so I told her I wasn't able, but.
Yeah.
Someone else is going, then it might be fun for them to go. So,
Gary, we can meet after this with Jennifer and kind of figure out all of those
Okay.
details.
Thank you.
Okay,
How much notice can we get before they're going to be hearing on a bill if you want us to ship our little selves up there?
so agendas for committees are 24 hours before, just like
Ooh.
here. So that's,
They're very letter of the law up there.
and it is 24 hours before usually. Earlier in the session, it might be longer, but the later you get in the session, it is 24 hours. It's pretty close to that, just because there's so many moving pieces, so.
They do allow for
Hard.
virtual attendance though, right?
Yeah, you can virtually testify and. So you can do that, but. And then the floor calendar. Will show you the order of the bills. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Good job. Mhm.
Next, a resolution regarding funding for the Airport Apron Expansion Project. To be presented by Brian Torgerson, our airport director.
We're ahead of schedule. Mhm.
The times
on,
weren't
good.
updated.
Oh,
You can.
they weren't on the thing.
Yeah, these times.
No, mine is updated.
Oh, yours is, oh, good, yeah.
I'll go ahead and speak to this item. I might not be able to answer all your questions about the specifics of the construction, but I can talk about the financing.
Come on, Jimmy.
So we're here to discuss a loan from UDOT for the airport. This is specifically to bridge a cash flow issue we have with some funding that's been awarded by MAG that isn't available until 2028. So the construction that we're planning to do is shown here in the blue and green, which they're at the bottom. So this is for the apron expansion. This is where the planes park. This allows for the full build out of the apron for a 10-gate terminal, which, like I said, we have 16.9 million from MAG that is available in 2028. And we have 11.9 from the FAA. So we're ready to move on this construction. And like I said, it's all of the apron that we need to do for the 10-gate expansion.
So when you say apron, it's just the concrete?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the fill's been brought in and it's all
Yes.
composited down and it's just ready to lay the concrete.
Yes. In order to, we have done that in the past. We have the dirt that's been sitting and compacting.
And we've done that all for all 10 days. We're just.
I think so, and I'm assuming so because we're ready to do the,
For the
yes,
concrete.
volume. I know for sure on the south side because I've seen that part, but that's some of the information that I'm missing
Okay.
that Brian would be able to provide.
And do we need more buildings to accommodate those 10 gates, or will the current terminal or current building that we have accommodate all 10?
No, there will be additional building, which is
The blue and the green?
I can't tell the colors from
The orange kind of olive color.
Right.
yeah, I can't tell from this.
Number
From
7,
this
number
picture.
5. Are your extensions for the extra gates.
Oh yeah, so where you can see the planes and the
That place gone now.
And that's not built yet, right, Isaac?
And what's 9, Isaac? The olive within the.
I believe that's representing the portion that's set aside for customs.
Oh,
Well, it'll be inside of it, but yeah.
But like walled off, so it's secure. Is that what we're talking about?
and would everything else, 1, 8, and 4 be future parking?
It's
Purple,
purple, red, and gray.
yeah, okay,
Number 3, you see the little blue there, that's pushing out our baggage claim and just creating a little more space on the existing building. And that's our next order of business, really, as far as the buildings go. Taking the baggage.
Do we have all of that dirt work done? For 3, 7, and 9?
Essentially, yes,
Okay.
including pipes and such under the ground is my understanding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when they did phase 1, they knew they wanted to do eventually those extra gates, so they took care of the earthwork, including the under the earthwork is my understanding for the expansion on both sides.
So all we need to do is just just put the framework up and make it look pretty and exist.
All the expensive ugly stuff that's under the ground.
It's already done.
But no, there's not that we did, but we only had to money to put for. So.
Okay. No, that's what I'm concerned about, because I know with that water table down there, they have to like compress for like a year,
Long time.
right? And it just seems like it would be awkward if they had to do all of that with an existing building and parking lot in place. So what we're looking at is the blue for 6 and the green for 2.
Yes,
Am I seeing those numbers right? And that's gonna be all concrete, that whole thing?
And it's not just concrete. Can you tell them a little bit about how much concrete and?
I don't know,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
is
It
a
has to
lot
be
of
crazy amount, yeah.
Sure.
That looks like a big,
17 million
huge
square
thing.
foot.
Yes.
Space.
And it has to be able to carry the weight of planes and it is a lot. Special concrete, very expensive concrete.
Counselor Garrett, Counselor Tammy.
So Jimmy, I have a question about I couldn't find in the report, so there's a 3.8% interest rate.
That's paid by
And
MAG, I found out.
what's that?
It's paid by MAG. I did
Okay,
find that out.
so I couldn't see how much
Yeah, it
that
didn't
would
say.
add up to and whether we were paying that
No, it's
difference.
MAG paying it.
So we're not paying any extra money for the
No.
loan, even though it's charging us money for the loan.
So the interest will accrue until we pay it when we get the MAG money back, but that's why there's the difference between the 4.5 and the 16.9. It's
Okay,
to pay the
okay.
interest that will accrue.
Got it. Okay, I was a little worried that we were
Yeah, that was my question.
getting
too.
hung up on a couple $1 million somewhere between the lines somewhere. Okay.
No, we specifically asked for the loan in the amount that we knew could cover the interest payment
Got it.
from the MAG money. So the reason we're coming to you this month is, we worked with the Utah Transportation Commission staff to work on the details of the loan, but it won't be formally adopted until next month. And in order to have that done in February, they've asked us to have a resolution from the council supporting this loan. So we're anticipating to come back in 2 weeks for that resolution. And if there's any other questions about the details of the financing, Hopefully I can answer that.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. Any other questions for Jimmy? All right, thank you. Do we know if, Justin, do we know if the presenters got given the updated times?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, these will put in prior to change.
Okay. All right, number 3. Great.
You're nodding in the back.
Okay, 3, an ordinance regarding a text amendment for the prohibition of sham property transactions. To be presented by Jessica. Jessica, how do you see your last name? Danique? Donachie, that's way cooler. Nice. I like it. Yes, okay.
I'm gonna start by thanking Michael because I didn't know quoting poets such as Vanilla Ice was an option. But,
I didn't know Vanilla Ice was a poet. That's
well, you know, opinions. Is this the? I uploaded them to On Face. Okay. Cool. That's fine. Basically, this ordinance text amendment came about as council staff was evaluating accessory dwelling units, and we kind of found a small hole in our code in the prohibition of sham property transactions. A sham property transaction is if you're changing ownership of a property to avoid owner occupancy requirement. So this text amendment is just filling that loophole of when a property is owned either by a trust or an LLC. It creates a clear guideline that is easier to understand and easier to enforce, where if a property is owned by a trust or an LLC and members of the LLC or trustors change within the first year of getting your rental dwelling license or consistently change during the rental period, that is now considered a sham transaction, and we can enforce this section of code with the property owner. Any questions?
Any questions? I know we're excited you guys are doing this. Rachel had something to say about this. She's not here.
There you go.
Brian, did she talk to you about this? She mentioned that she wanted it to be more, like, did you find the email, Becky? That she wanted to be more like, that it was just a no if they were an LLC, or they had to be educated, like that it doesn't, it went through a slightly different process, so that they got educated while doing it, that LLCs go down this route versus, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't talked to her and haven't seen anything about that. I don't know that there's, I mean, if there's. I guess I'm not
Will, I
exactly
guess
sure what's
will they
contemplated.
get educated while they're doing this to understand?
Can I just read this? And she
Yes.
says,
Here she is.
oh, here she is. Is she here? Yes.
She is. You're now presenting Rachel Joe.
I am. All right, let's do it.
You had something you wanted with the sham transactions?
Yes. I don't know if it's appropriate to put it in this part of the legislation, but maybe it just should be in a different section. But it seems that it would be useful to establish a rebuttable presumption that if the property is owned by an LLC or trust, it should automatically not get an ADU, and they would need to overcome that by presenting evidence of who their members are, who the trustees are, before an ADU can be granted to one of those property owners.
Yeah, I like that.
What do you think about that, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Jessica, is there more to the text than what's on the screen?
No, this
It's
is
just
what
that-
we had gone
No.
through before.
Okay.
And so it didn't seem that it necessarily fit in here,
Yeah,
but that would be an additional thing.
So just a process or?
well, no, it's a standard of. And I think that was somewhat the intent here. I mean, I think the phrase unless every member or trusted restorer can be demonstrated to occupy. When we wrote that, our intent was to say, unless development services, unless the members of the trust and the trustors can demonstrate to development services satisfaction that they occupy the premises as their primary residence, then it's presumed to be a sham transaction.
Yeah, and so this is different because it's
but
not
the-
saying it's a transaction. I want this also, right?
Right. Yeah, so you're talking specifically about adding something similar, but even more clear to the rental dwelling license section if it's dealing with an ADU license.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
And then as a matter of policy or process, when a property owner who is an LLC or as a trust is coming in applying, then they should be given information about this sham transaction thing, so they know if they do a conveyance or change their members or something within a certain period of time, it's going to look bad and they may lose that ADU. Because I don't want, some cute little family that set up a trust and then, you have grandma going into a care facility, so you're changing who can be in the house. I don't want them to get caught and on the wrong side of this. I want them to know what the process is and what the requirements are. But I also don't want to make it easier for investor LLCs to, I just want everyone on notice.
Yeah, and I think those are all great points. The reason why I was hesitating and I asked about more language, now that I've thought about it some more. We recently did another amendment that I can't look up exactly what it says right now because it's not, because the code's not updated yet. But the amendment that we already did about what owner occupancy means, I think it already includes some of that stuff. But I think that taking that, asking the question, revisiting what we already did and making sure that we don't need to add even more to it is a great idea.
Yeah, I just really like the idea that our default answer, if you have an LLC, is no, you don't get an ADU unless you meet this burden.
Yeah.
And so changing the default, I think, would be helpful. And it wouldn't be a blanket no.
Right.
Well, ours says that, ours says that everyone on the LLC has to be an owner. Not
Live in
has
it.
to be an occupant.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So
It
that's
was-
what ours that's what the latest code amendment says.
Yeah.
Do we require proof though? I mean, do we
Yeah.
require-
That's the new
Yeah.
thing that we
LLC.
did.
Yeah.
Can I
That's-
speak to our current procedure? Coming from, before I was a planner, I was reviewing the rental license applications. And when the property is owned by an LLC or a trust, we do ask before approval for a copy of that documentation. So we can say who the trusters are, who the LLC members are, so we have that baseline so that we can see if things change from initial approval.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
one-
not in code yet, but it is a part of our operating procedure.
But the new one that we passed, like I said, I need to reread it exactly in light of what you just suggested, but the new provision that we already passed specifically changed the definition of owner, of proof of owner occupancy, and it specifically says, as I recall, you can't get a license until you have proved there will be owner occupancy to the satisfaction of development services. And it gives a list of things that count, but says even meeting all of these criteria is not enough. You have to satisfy development services that it's actually true.
Yeah,
So, so I think we're probably 90% of the way there, but I want to review it because I don't remember
Yeah.
the exact wording.
Yeah,
That's great.
I think as like a messaging or a statement, the idea that the answer is going to be no
Right.
for these types of owners until you prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Sends the message that we really want
So we're
owners to live there, yeah.
Like from a financial aspect, most people don't have their home in an LLC, so you can't write off the taxes.
Yeah.
So unless it's fully paid for, they're always used as investment properties, not your generally not your owner occupancy house.
And
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look at it.
just to address another concern that you brought up, Councilor Whipple, I think something that we could do is include in our disclosure document that we already have a line that simply reiterates that, so that when someone is issued the license, they also have their disclosure document that's stating as a reminder, if you're changing your ownership, your members of your LLC, that could be considered a sham transaction.
Oh, is that gonna be added to the RDL?
It's something we could add to the disclosure document
Yeah,
very
that'd be good.
simply. It wouldn't
Yeah.
require.
I think that would be really useful because I could see somebody coming in, they've got the LLC set up and they don't realize that changing the membership could change the ADU status, right? Because they're not conveying the property to a different entity. And so it just may not even occur to them.
Yeah, so I can work with Scott Johnson and we can get some language just as an additional bullet point to the disclosure document.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be something that would need to come back to the council.
I like that idea. The thing that I think though, people are gonna forget, just like you forget everything. And they're gonna do it and then they're still gonna play victim. So, I mean, I like the idea of having it out there front. So that when they come in, that you can say, okay, we've done this.
They've signed off.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be the end all is my point. I still think it's gonna happen. And it's gonna mistakenly happen. It's not gonna be anything bad, but yeah. And then they can just say, hey, you signed this. We talked about someone from this, from your LLC, and there's somebody new, you may have forgotten, but you need to still have this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Jessica? Okay,
Great,
thanks,
thanks.
Jessica. All right, we have a break. Does anyone need a break? Karen, should we keep going? Yeah, you did. Okay, let's keep on for a bit. All right, number 4, an ordinance approving the petition to annex approximately 15.6 acres and located approximately at 1000 North Lakeview Parkway for the Lakeview North Neighborhood. Again, Jessica.
Are these slides there?
I don't know, so I just tried what was
Okay,
I
I
will try.
uploaded them both to work session and council just as PDFs. Anyway,
We can take a minute and try and find them, Jessica.
okay. You want me to run upstairs and email them? It is relatively straightforward. The slides were more for visual. To see the actual annexation area.
So I do wanna say with this.
Okay, we're gonna take a break.
We are.
Yeah, 10 minutes, guys. So you go find your slides, Jessica, and
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, we're just gonna pick up again at an ordinance approving the petition to annex approximately 15.6 acres of land located approximately 1,000 North Lakeview Parkway, presented by Jessica Danahy.
So you've seen this resolution before. This is just the ordinance to annex this land. It's 3 parcels of land. One being owned by the school district and having part of the high school parking lot on it, and then the other 2 are Provo City property. So the proposed area for annexation is part of our annexation map in section 4. The future land use from the general plans marks it as residential. And then if the area is annexed in, the next steps would be for a rezone and concept plan and then a project plan before anything could be developed on this property. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Jessica? Counselor Bogdan?
So I'll reiterate this tonight if we have people or even if we don't, so it's on public record. But when we started to get all the concerns about this property, I did go to the school board and to the superintendent. And they have no desire to purchase the property for any reason. They feel that their parking is sufficient at the high school. They feel like people choose to park on the streets for their events because it's closer for them to walk. And the parking lot is never full and it's never even close to full. They feel like the high school has plenty of room for growth. They're seeing a stagnant population, but they're seeing a change. So they're having less people in elementary school and more people in the upper grades. However, they're redoing Timpview High School and they just did Provo High School, and there's plenty of room for growth in both high schools. So, and then as far as the concern with safe routes to school, I talked to the superintendent. She says she's never heard of anything. And so then I talked to Sergeant Bascom this morning through email. He said he's not heard of anything. And Vern said the only thing he's heard is the 2 crosswalks, and somebody wants the beacons to be brighter, but they don't feel that it needs to be brighter for the safety of the students. So none of those concerns that the planning commission, and I did that in August, and then I spoke with Terry again this morning, and she reiterated the same thing. She said that their study will become public. They'll start discussing their study the first meeting in February, which is like February 11th. So then people can start to understand the boundary study, where the population is going. She said even the elementary school, they have that property in Broadview Shores, and so there's no need for any additional property or elementary schools, or none of those concerns are shared by the district or the superintendent or by our staff that reviews the safe route to school plans. She's like nodding. Anything else you have to add, Mayor? You've checked on all of them too? So the mayor checked on him. I've checked on him twice, once this morning, once in August. The mayor's checked on him. I feel for those people. I just don't see where any of those concerns lie.
Thanks, Becky. Any other questions for Jessica? Right, thank you. Thank you. Next, an ordinance amending Provo City Code in order to clarify and update standards for flag lots. This will be presented by Dustin Wright.
So yeah, here's the flag lot ordinance update that we'd like to bring forward. So we've taken a look at some of the areas that we can improve on with flag lots, and this amendment is kind of aiming towards helping improve our opportunities with flag lots. And so essentially what we're looking at with this one would be reducing the flagpole portion of the lots a little bit to be able to make some more flexibility for more lots to be able to utilize this. And also this ordinance would help if there's adjacent flag lots, that it would, instead of having a 40-foot wide 20 for each one, the 40-foot width would be able to be decreased down to 25 feet. So we see these as some opportunities to help improve that. Get better efficiency with our land use and help increase our housing stock here in the city. As well as improve some safety as well. So shrinking those, those drive aisles are going to make it safer for pedestrians. There'll be less conflicts with driveways and vehicles. So we see that as a good opportunity as well. So this will come to you tonight. It's been forwarded from staff and the planning commission with a positive recommendation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Dustin? I was curious, was there a particular thought that brought this to our attention and made this change?
I think typically we see it when we work with people at the front counter that come in and have a property that they're looking to develop, and we kind of look at that. And so we've seen it kind of over time, and I think we've gotten to the point where we've seen enough of those that we see that making these improvements will help, in those areas to be able to do that. So yeah, we've seen it from time to time. I feel like now it's as good a time as any to make some changes for improvements there.
Thanks, Councilor Bogdan.
Just a question about the sprinklers. So we're kind of messing a little bit with the fire. Because they're gonna be required sprinklers, is that right?
So yeah, we met with the fire department, fire marshal on this to get their input as well. And so they said if it's a home that's gonna be over 200 feet from the street, then they'd like to have a turnaround and have those homes be fire sprinkled. So that's kind of an added thing that they wanted to make sure was in this code for homes that are set back further, but it wouldn't necessarily be on all flag lots, just ones that are over 200 feet back.
And is that just because they can't get the fire truck back that far?
Yeah, it's to help make sure that turnaround so they can get a fire truck turned around and out of there if the issue gets to where they need to do that. And also just to meet those fire codes that they have. Those requirements, I think, come from that. So they want to make sure that this update had those in there as well.
So they can make sure the structure's still intact when they put out the fires. Okay,
Yeah,
so does it go to another?
Yeah, those fire sprinkle systems really help them and give them a lot of reassurance in that. So in their field of work.
Thank you.
Right, thanks, Dustin.
Thanks.
Next ordinance regarding a zone map amendment from R18 and RA zones to the AI zone in order to develop a 25-acre flex industrial campus located approximately 3450 West Center Street in the Fort Utah neighborhood, presented by Aaron Ardmore.
All right, thank you. So this one most of you are familiar with at this point. We've done a general plan amendment. There's a prior zone change on it. Part of this is tied to a zone change that will be coming to you in the next couple of months. So you've got a 24-acre piece the west there, highlighted in that left picture. But there's also 11-acre piece on the east side. That's kind of grayed out there. Those work together to provide this kind of flex industrial campus. That's going to be coming after these if these zone changes are approved. So this first one is further along. They've got a signed development agreement already. They've gotten all the owners to sign it, which details the zone standards, the river amenities, the pedestrian walkway and access through the site and along the river there. Those were important to us in the past, and we've put those in the development agreement, and they've agreed to those things. There is an existing development agreement on this property from when it was going to be residential. So that will have to be replaced by the proposed development agreement if you were to move forward on this zone change tonight. But it's the zone that we expected to see, our port industrial. I think that's kind of getting us what we expected after the general plan change.
And you say that they are going to be doing the exact same thing with the lot next to it.
Yes, exact same thing. Their new concept actually shows building straddling both of the sites. So they won't be able to get going on that until both zone changes are done, completed, approved.
Okay. Councilor Christensen.
And have they guaranteed home ownership of these warehouses?
I'm just playing with it.
It's like,
This-
We actually.
I'm pretty sure from this map, but all of this is south of Provo River, correct?
yes, yep.
Okay,
There's some
And-
boundary line changes that we'll have to deal with. Some of their property, you can see some of their property goes over the river.
That's
But
what it
that
looks
will
like.
be dealt with in the plat.
okay. And then you mentioned that they had talked about the trail access and
Yes.
things like that. Do you have pictures of that or anything? Again, just, I'm very sensitive to, that's such a beautiful area. We have invested as a city and as a state and as a county in that beautiful area. So how that is actually done matters a great deal.
Right.
So have they offered any drawings or?
Not to the detail that you're probably looking for, just what's on this. That's the exhibit that's attached to the development agreement, showing a pedestrian walkway all around the west, north, and east of the site. With nodes of the open spaces for benches and park-like features.
And a workout space. Does it give 10, is it 10 feet that the trail has to be?
Yes, it's at least 10 feet. It'll probably be wider than that because there's gonna be a 40-foot easement from the river to where they could put any buildings. So there's plenty of space to provide that amenity.
And remind me again what the height of the building is?
The height of the building, they're still so conceptual on that. But it would be limited to essentially a 2-story building in this zone.
So what's that, 40 feet, 30 feet?
Let me look that up and get back to you on that one.
I'm just, also thinking about visuals from this,
Yeah.
from looking
Trail?
from the north, from the trail on the other side of the river, from the Delta area, anybody who's kind of recreating along there, what is that gonna look like is,
55 feet is the maximum. From everything I've seen in the concept plans, it's not gonna get to
55?
that point. Yeah,
Is that 2-story?
no, that's over. So the maximum number of building stories I misspoke is 3
Mhm.
in these zones. With a maximum height of 55. But like I said, in the concepts that I've seen, they're just 2-story buildings at this point.
No, I'm kind of confused.
The airport's gonna control some of that as well through the flight lines and.
I'm kind of confused. So which parcel is gonna come to us later on?
So everything. East here. This stuff here,
Okay.
that. That one.
Now, I remember a meeting where Travis and Dave Shipley were like, not there, I prefer houses. And it was zoned this kind of industrial space. Which one was that?
So that's when we took through the general plan change from residential to airport related.
Oh, so that was. a
That's when that
specific parcel.
conversation came up.
That was just a general plan change?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now these zone changes are trying to follow that.
And are they still planning on having some kind of a fast food amenity or something in there?
No, it's all just flex industrial warehouse.
But I would like to say that the west side, the residents that have concerns are the same as Craig and George's, that this is the best place of the river trail, and it would be sad to have those kinds of things that aren't like real protected amenities and something that's probably 55 feet.
is there any way that we can preserve, there are cottonwoods on both sides, aren't there? I think.
Yeah.
Is there a
there are.
population though?
And those cottonwoods are higher than 55 feet, but they're, I think, they're pretty enormous. And so are we able to guarantee they won't get cut down?
There's not a guarantee. There's a city code that talks about preserving existing trees when possible. So it's kind of it's not a shall, but it's a when you can.
But George, I'm gonna be honest with you, everything I've seen over here with the level of filter that they have to put in,
That's
they
good.
have to take out all of the trees because it'll kill the trees. So take them out so that they have no liability litter. Is what they do. So I don't think any of.
Because
those
they're bringing in
companies-
so much infill.
Yeah, it'll kill the trees.
Yeah.
So it's better to take the trees out first and then bring filter in. And then
There
plant.
still
new-
may be opportunity there. If they're only filling the site where the buildings are, maybe they can slope it down, but. That's a conversation we can have with them for sure.
But when you say conversation, like what kind of, this is just all word of trust, or is there any way we can I mean, what kind of leverage do we have to?
In the code, it's a little loose. It's a recommendation. So if the council felt strong enough about it, they could have that with the applicant tonight. See if
Okay.
that's something that they could proffer.
I am gonna push back a little bit and say cottonwoods are an abomination. You get teenagers that are walking those trails and they light them on fire. And that's one of the problems that we're having with Cottonwood Park. And the county owns that and the county, I guess, is refusing to come in and take care of that. So if you have any influence there, those residents would be very grateful because their homes have nearly burnt a couple of times with that. And so I know, talking to Chaz, there are different trees that would be better than the cottonwood. That would probably fulfill some of those same.
Yeah, the problem is it's just the consistency and legacy trees that you've got there that are so tall. That it seems like they would really help to shield the viewer from the warehouses in general. And so it seems like they've got kind of some help from those trees that if we were to take them down and plant something else, it would look very inconsistent with what's already there. So.
And I would say based on your report that it's not the trees that they're the abomination, but the teenagers.
All right, any other questions for Aaron? Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, next, an ordinance regarding a zone map amendment from the A1.5 zone to the MDR zone in order to build 16 townhome units located approximately 5568 North Canyon Road in the North Timpview neighborhood.
Okay, so another one that you're familiar with.
I feel like we've been looking at these ones forever.
You saw high density zone request here twice, actually, last spring and summer. He's heard the comments, from the public, from the neighbors, from this plan commission for city council. He's come back with this proposal to do medium density residential with just those 16 townhomes.
And
For
he's
sale.
agreed to sell them all.
Yeah, for sale units. Development agreement. Yeah, I don't know what questions you have on this,
Okay.
but it's meeting
Is
the
that-
general
Is that
plan.
a fact?
Yep,
All of it?
yes. And what about, my only question is, with the development agreement, if we're giving, because MDR can be built a lot more dense. With the development agreement that he has to stick to this.
Yes, for
So
sure.
what if he sells it? They
It
have to
stays
stick to
with,
this?
yep, stays with the
Great.
title.
So either you have to do this or they have to come back to us.
Exactly.
Okay, I think it's great.
And do we have the infrastructure for this?
Yes, yeah, Public Works has given the go ahead for this zone change to move forward. So they're comfortable with the number of connections needed.
Yeah, that's why he made it smaller, so.
And we're comfortable with the development agreement as it stands, that we tie the hands to this many units and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, we could look at the details of that as we move forward with the applicant and the owner to make sure that it's capturing everything that the council wants and that the developer has proffered.
He says something about Bonneville Shoreline Trail access, so is that gonna be from the back?
Yeah,
Of
so you
the
can see kind of
condos.
where that
Condos.
excess parking is.
Got it.
In his landscape plan, he would have a trail connection going up to
Okay.
that north
And
south.
Just
doing
up to the access
He's
road.
doing a
is probably
trailhead,
all I was
too.
thinking.
But we want to make
He's
sure
doing a
that,
trailhead too.
Yeah,
we want to make sure that that is all in the development agreement because we don't want it to be like an Osprey Homes thing where it's just talked about. And it's done. So is that something we need to push for in this meeting?
I think it is in the development
Tonight.
agreement. Am
that's
I
what I
wrong?
thought I
Is
saw.
there a draft already?
There's a draft, but I don't think it details this latest subject as much as it sounds like it is needed.
So we probably need to ask for a proffer.
Yeah, I mean,
He's already proffered it. in
they'll
the-
tie down the concept plan. So we just either need to make sure that the right exhibit is in there to show that connection or spell it out in section 4 of the development agreement.
Yeah, I think you can, I mean, technically, Brian, can he just put it in because he's already proffered it in multiple meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to remember, like when George said that, I was thinking that it came up because it's already in there, but do we have a copy that we can put up section 4?
I read it
I thought it was in there too.
If not now, I would say probably one of the, during Aaron's presentation, let's put up section 4 tonight. It looks like it's there.
Shame on you, it's driving me crazy.
I saw that. Perfect.
So yeah, it's there right there in 4E. Yes.
There you go. And that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you need to fix maybe 50%.
Yeah.
He said 100.
Yes, we will have to update that.
So let's not have that show
And-
in the meeting tonight.
And is that a rolling repurchase? I mean, does it have to,
Every time it's sold.
every time it's sold, the first year has to be owner occupied?
To me, we need to be very clear. When we talk about owner occupancy or for sale, we need to be clear what we mean by that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're leaving ourselves open to what you're hearing.
Yeah. I would feel more comfortable if this said that it was actually tied to recorded as part of the deed. And every time it was sold the first year, otherwise 12 months go by and an investor and an institutional investor comes in and buys them up. And prices them out of range. So I'd like to see it be more specific than that. I don't know how others feel about that.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
So that would have to come up tonight and kind of the David.
But can we just use this as staff? Do we need to take some kind of vote to say that from here on out, when we talk about owner occupancy, so that when Bill talks to these people, we can say that this is something that rolls over?
Yeah.
Is that something that we need to vote on, Bill, or is that? something-
Well, we're already discussing with Brian's office, one of the state attorneys about coming up with the actual instrument, the deed restriction we would record. At the same time, we record the plat. Make sure that that's recorded as in the chain of title. So that's all being worked on.
Yes, let's see. But to your point, Becky, I guess, I mean, it's always helpful for staff to know exactly what the council's expectation is, because unless you have a motion on that, we don't know for sure that more than that 4 or more of you, that what you just said is your expectation when you say owner occupancy. So if you want there to be kind of a standing guidance that when you say in a rezone that you want owner occupancy, that you mean that's what you mean, then that's great, because then we can.
Yeah.
Got something.
I think, for me, I think it would be helpful to have, a set of tools. I mean, it doesn't have, because I don't know that, every single, if. I could imagine a scenario in which a landowner is saying, I want to have this much offered for sale for this long, and we would agree with that as a reasonable expectation. But in other cases, we may say, no, we want this rolling over, so that there's different tools, right? That we, because we might hamstring ourselves a little bit if we're saying anytime we ask for home ownership, we're always meaning this, and then some developers are gonna say, well, that's not gonna work for me.
Yeah, and as I was saying, to be clear, and Bill and I have had this conversation before, if you were to make such a motion now, that is not law. It doesn't prevent someone from coming and asking for something different, but it gives Bill an opportunity. I mean, so my view on that is Bill's staff should not be saying, we're not gonna forward your application unless you agree to this deed restriction. Their job is to say, council has voted that they generally mean this, so you need to be aware of that before you come present to them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think our point is just that CC&Rs aren't sufficient. They're too easily amended. So we've got to take something beyond that the city can enforce. Make sure we're achieving whatever level of ownership you're deciding is appropriate.
Well, how about, how about if we just take a quick, I don't know how everyone feels about that. How about if I make a motion that, we instruct, development services to define home ownership as, recorded in the deed. Again, I'm not sure technically, but recorded in the deed so that it becomes an in perpetuity, unless there's an exception made. So that when we talk about home ownership, that's what it would mean.
You have to go to another step. Do you need a year? Do you need 2 years? How long is it under occupancy before it's gonna be rented? What does that mean? That's not.
Yeah. Yeah,
Your intention would be that it must be owner occupied for a year after it's been conveyed or purchased.
yes,
And each subsequent conveyance or purpose would
Yes.
start over that year for the new
that's correct,
owner.
yes.
And during that first year, it could not be rented out to anyone. That your
Yes.
intention?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see somebody who really wants to use it as a rental, getting it and sitting on it for a year.
That
But
restriction does keep out the institutional investors who
Yeah.
buy and just after the rent.
exactly.
To hold.
Does that prevent, we have people in Provo who go away for a year and rent out? Does that prevent somebody? from
No, we have that exclusion for provisions and stuff. So.
Does that exception, I mean, because even this would only, even what we're talking about now would only apply, even if that exception didn't exist, it would only apply if they went away during the first year of ownership.
Right.
Right? And I can't remember whether that exception requires that they have been in the house for a period of time before they apply for the exception already. Do you remember,
I
Bill?
don't think it does. Is that
Okay.
something for you, Aaron?
I can't recall, I haven't dealt with that since
I
I was
don't
in
think it
zoning.
does, but we'll look it up.
So probably, but so if not, then the exception would trump that even in those particular cases.
So is your motion still on the table, Craig?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm not sure I know, are we voting, is the motion to apply it to this, or are you making a motion? Broadly?
I was thinking broadly, so moving forward from today, that's how we define home ownership, so there's clear guidance for development services.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I was saying earlier is that if in a given situation where we think a percentage works better, we're not bound by anything.
Right. We could always change
Proposing,
that.
right? We can.
I don't think he said 100% homeowner occupancy. Apartment complex. I think he's just saying, what we mean as homeowner occupied is something that is occupied for a year by the owner. And then if it's sold again, it's gonna be occupied for a year by the owner before you can rent it out.
And so I guess just to be clear, I'm gonna put a little bit of a spin on your motion, Counselor Christensen, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because again, we're not intending to make law here. You're not proposing an actual code
Right.
change. So what I hear you actually proposing is that the council agree right now that the default when development services talks with a developer about council home ownership expectations is that their default preference is for what you just described.
Okay.
And then if the developer wants anything different than that, they should be prepared to speak to that when they present to you.
Yes.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah,
So,
I think that would then address George's point.
So do we need to change the motion or is it pretty?
No.
Are you okay with the way I
Yeah,
restated your
I'm
motion?
good with the spin.
Are you okay with the second? Okay, we're good then.
That'd be lovely.
And my kids. All right, so take a vote on the motion. Council Christensen,
Yes.
Councilor Hoban,
Yes.
Councilor Whitlow,
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes, Councilor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilor Hanley,
Yes.
Councilor Bogdan,
Yes.
all right?
I think that'll be very helpful because as Bill mentioned, one of the attorneys in the office is working on the template for the deed restriction. So this will give her some guidance about what to put in the template. And then that can be the standard document that we hand to developers and say, this is the expected deed restriction. And then we can, if they ask for something different and you approve it, we can change it to something different.
I love it.
As a side thing now, we might want to relook at that license required section, so that's 626.020. Because it's saying that we don't have to have the business license for renting out if you're doing it for that temporary thing, which is up to 3 years. But it also has a definition of owner occupancy in there as well that we might want to update based on our conversations about.
I think we did already and it's just not showing
It's
in the
just not
code.
in here.
Because it's, because I think we updated I think we updated that definition everywhere when we made the update.
Okay.
But I will definitely double check.
But yeah, this allows for a temporary absence of 3 years. So I don't know, if we're still happy with that.
And for what it's worth, I don't want to create nightmare scenarios, but I know that there has been at least one case that code enforcement has been fighting with where somebody bought a home, rented it from day one, never lived in it, and used that exception for the first 3 years to claim that that was okay. Because they immediately left in fact, they might have already been away on their service or trip when they bought the home. But
Yeah, because I think the language that we might want to look at there is a unit which is ordinarily owner occupied, but is temporarily rented. And so maybe define what is ordinarily owner occupied as actual occupation for some period of time before they can do this.
Well, do we define temporarily rented? Is that like a term of 3 years period then?
Yeah, that's defined within this for the temporary absence of 3 years or less for. Well, it's such as, so it's not restricting it to temporary job assignments, sabbaticals, or voluntary service, but those are typical examples of things that would qualify. Should we, Brian, would it be helpful if we do a motion to have this revisited, or is that enough to get legal looking at it?
I think that's enough unless anybody says they think that's a bad idea.
I think it's an awesome idea.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sending myself a task to do it right now.
All right, do the next one too, huh? An ordinance regarding a zone map amendment from the A1.5 zone to the MDR zone, or did that one? Okay, so we're good.
That's it.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
All right, next is David Day with an ordinance regarding text amendments to section 15.03.020 to update 2024 standards to 2025 standards.
Thank you, David Day with Public Works. Bill left because he said this is boring. I think it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. So, we had 10 changes to our Provo City standards and specs this year. As part of this update, we update the actual city ordinance because it references the things that we're changing. So you'll see the actual 15.3 being updated with some numbers and such. We also reference all of our exterior standards that we use, UDOT, federal highways, all of those sort of standards are incorporated into our ordinance. The only things that we can kind of control in all of those changes is our Provo City standards and specs. So that's what we're focusing on here. And we had 4 changes to the standard drawings, 3 completely new drawings. There's also 3 pages of our development guidelines that were adjusted. Do you have that PowerPoint by chance? I don't know if that's that packet, but I could go over those really quick. The most exciting one that I could think of is we have a sewer lateral that can now be killed from the side of the road. What they do is they put an injection tube down the sewer lateral, fill it with foam, and that caps it off at the main. So if you don't think that's exciting, it saves the contractor about $15,000. So that part of it is exciting. Yeah, I'm excited.
So David, are we saying like if somebody came and they wanted to redevelop my entire street, they could cap all those off with the foam and then they just bring in their own lateral that's bigger to surface whatever they're gonna do? That was like a big lawn or something.
Yeah, so anytime we change a use on a property, we normally make them kill those sewer mains, the sewer laterals at the main. And it becomes a pretty major expense because they have to dig down 10, 15 feet right in the middle of the road. Becomes a huge hole. Then they have to fill it back in and pave it back. So we're trying to eliminate that.
How do they do the foam? How do they access it?
So they dig down on the side from the home and they go through the sewer lateral to the main and they fill it up from the main out, and they do about 5 feet of
So
it.
they can just do it in the dirt, not in the concrete.
Yeah, it's not concrete, it's
And it's just a spray
it's
foam.
that expanding foam, but it's different than the stuff you buy at Home Depot. It's a high density foam. You can't really break it apart unless you really have like a chisel or something. So
It doesn't corrode.
it's better than the great stuff. Okay, you buy at Home Depot.
It's the great stuff.
Yeah. I'll try to find that and we can show some pictures to you tonight if you're.
Okay, Councilor Whipple has a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering why this doesn't include adopting the new MUTCD? Because don't we have until December of this year to get that done? It's only 2 years from the time it was published in the Federal Register.
We can, but we've heard that UDOT is adopting it right away, and so we're kind of trying to be ahead of it. If you prefer, we could change that back to the old one and then wait and see.
Well, it looks like we still have the old one and we haven't adopted the new one that's been out for a year,
We didn't last year because it was still really new,
right?
but everybody's feeling more comfortable with it now. And we're planning to adopt it.
And Rachel, what is that?
That's the manual of uniform traffic control devices. So that controls signs on the street, paint markings on the street and at railroad crossings and.
You're asking about the acceptance of that protocol.
Well, yeah, they just finally updated it after what, like 15 years or something?
We were working off of the 2009.
Right.
So now we have the 2023 version.
Yeah.
That's what Vern uses to establish, can I put a stop sign here or not?
Right. And so that's why when I was looking at the Exhibit A, it still has the old MUTCD on there.
Oh. That may be a mistake on my part.
Okay.
I don't know if we could edit that, and if you feel comfortable with that, that's our intent. That UDOT lags behind with their specialized. I don't know why they do this because it's a lot of work and I'm not sure it's very productive, but they take the MUTCD, they look at it, they do a specialized Utah version of it.
Yeah, they only change usually just a few things.
It's
So they haven't gotten that done yet.
They haven't got that done yet.
Okay,
And
so that's why we're not adopting.
we're kind of delaying that
Okay.
and waiting for them, but if you would like to adopt that before that, then we can.
No, I'm fine. I was just wondering why it wasn't there and you've answered.
We're already using it.
Yeah.
The 23, when we get our, our update, we get the new copies. Electronically, our version is electronic, so that's what we're using.
Okay, so at some point this year, Utah's probably going to get their adjustments in and adopt that, and then we'll need to go ahead and adopt it immediately after.
Yeah, and we could do that in a special a meeting all just for, that motion and such.
Okay, I just knew that there was a deadline for the adoption and I wanted to make sure we were okay. Sounds like
Yeah.
we are.
We tend to be on top of all that and we're using
the newest versions of everything. Sometimes we even use stuff that's not even out yet. For instance, our ADA stuff that we use is stuff that was proposed years ago by the access board, but we just started doing it because it looked like it was going to happen anyway, and we didn't want to build ramps 5-10 years ago that would be out of compliance today when they actually adopt it. So we're using all the most modern things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, David. All right, next, an ordinance regarding rooftop solar rates. This is presented by Scott Bunker. And we're 15 minutes early. Thanks.
Good.
Yep, go ahead, Scott. Thank you. Sorry, we're running early.
No, that's great.
Thanks for being
That's
here.
good. I'm actually excited about that. So this is a great topic, and if we need more time, now we have a little more time. So I'm excited about that. Grateful to be here with you today, counselors. Appreciate your time. I've got with me Charlie Little, our business manager, and she has been crunching and munching many millions of data points, quite literally. She could explain to you later. I mean, she was working with files between her and UMPA that were taking days and hours to send it back and forth. There's so much data that they've been crunching. And then we also have with us Becky. Where did Becky go? Oh, there she is. And Becky is our PIO, our key accounts administrator, our public relations specialist, and our sustainability specialist. And so she's here with us today as well. I will just say this, I'm always bragging. I think Provo Power has probably the most robust sustainability team we've ever had, and we're excited about that, and we'll show you a little bit about that today. Just a little bit brief history, just a reminder, this whole topic came up the first of this last year in one of our board meetings. We're having a lot of discussions about different rates, and this rate that we reimburse our rooftop solar customers with came up, and a question was asked of us. Hey, wait a minute, why are people being incentivized or subsidized? We'll talk a little bit more about those terms later. And so we had a pretty good discussion about that. And then we're given the direction to go back and actually pull the actual numbers out. And so that's what we've done. We've spent a lot of time in the last several months doing that. You've heard a lot of them. We're going to refine that down further today for you as well. So hopefully what we've tried to do is we've heard a lot of questions. We've talked with a lot of people. We've had a lot of meetings. We've tried to take all the questions that we've heard and all the comments, and we want to try to answer them. And so hopefully we do this in this presentation for you. And then of course, any questions that you have along the way, if something's not clear, please let us know. But I'm going to present for the first half, and then Charlie's going to take over when we get to the calculations and the formulas and stuff that we utilize to come up with the options that we have. Just remind at the time it was a unanimous vote by our board to go ahead and bring this to the council and provide this information. And so that's what we're doing today. We're providing you with information that we were asked to get. Just want to cover a couple points real quick. Some of these slides, just so you know, you've seen them before. We're going to skip some of them because they were actually prepared for tonight's meeting instead, where we felt like the public needed to know some information that you already had that they haven't. And so obviously, our BHAG, but we've been teased a little bit lately. I won't say any names, George, but and George is right. Why is sustainability not on our BHAG? But it is in our mission statement, and I wanted to highlight that because I think it's important as we couch all of our research that we've done. It says we are proactive stewards of the environment while maintaining our fiscal responsibility to the citizens of Provo, and that's how we approach this. There are two sides to this issue. There's a sustainability side and there's a fiscal side. I don't think that they overly compete with each other. We see good things on both sides. We see benefits on both sides, pros and cons. And so the ultimate question comes down to you as a council. What is most important as you represent the citizens in your areas? What is most important to you as you move forward and make a vote? And so that's how we've approached this presentation, is with that balance of focusing on being good stewards of the environment and also our fiscal responsibility. And so we want to hit on a few things today. Of course, you know these slides, you've seen them before. Very, very low rates that Provo has. Obviously, over time, we covered these with you as well. Again, just proud of our resource mix and where we're heading as we move forward. Last time we talked about the grid and how important it is. At any given time, our rooftop solar customers are either pulling power off the grid or they're putting power on the grid. And that's why, you know, some people are confused with why do they have to pay a power bill at all or pay for any part. It's because they're always using that grid. It costs us an extensive amount of money. And I think we went through this slide the last time. And so you understand the breakdown of that. I think a lot of our citizens, as we've talked to them lately, they don't quite understand this. And so we're excited for another opportunity to educate them as well tonight if that happens. The one thing we didn't cover this last time, and I wanted to just hit on, and it's really this bottom line. In Utah County, this is where the bulk of pollution comes from. 60% of the pollution in Utah County comes from cars. 37% comes from buildings. So that's your hot water heaters, your furnaces, et cetera. And then only 3% comes from heavy industrial. There's just not a lot of heavy industry in Utah County. In Salt Lake County, it's actually 13% heavy industry. And then of course, these numbers are adjusted for that. But that gives you kind of a good idea when you look about sustainability and the big question being, how do we reduce CO2 in Provo? Where are the biggest contributors? Cars and buildings. And so we
Scott, a quick question on that. I see at the bottom, that's from a 2013 study. Do you expect the last decade would reflect similarly?
That's a great question. We actually have another one that's exactly the same.
Okay.
Was from a few years ago, just different entity.
More recently.
I don't have as much faith in that entity as I do this one. And so that's why we kind of stuck with it. But the numbers were the same, so I felt confident using them.
Great, thank you.
No, thank you. Great question. And so today, for my portion, I want to just go through what we call kind of our multifaceted approach to sustainability here in Provo. Again, bragging, I believe that Provo Power is one of the most, if not the most sustainable power company in the state. I would match us up against anybody else in a lot of what we do. We do a lot of things, and these are some of the programs that we have that you're familiar with. We're going to cover some of them. Specifically, we want to break down some of the numbers and show you how sustainable they are, how effective they are, how efficient. Those are two words you're going to hear from Charlie and I a lot. It's how effective is it and how cost efficient is it? Because I think they're very important to us as you make a decision on what is the most important thing moving forward. I didn't want to hit this because this is one people don't think of. Recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we built these osprey nests to go around Utah Lake. We got with the Division of Wildlife Resources and the Department of Natural Resources. We had one of these down on the south side of town. This is kind of a video of one that was really close to our power lines, and we were having a lot of power outages on that circuit. And we started finding out that these ospreys were grabbing all of this stuff on this side of the lines and carrying over their nests and dropping on our lines and causing a lot of outages. So I contacted the DWNR, said, what can we do? And they said, well, if you can help us build a new nest somewhere else, then we'll do it. And then it turned into 2, and then it turned into 3.
Yeah, it comes back to housing, doesn't it?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's always affordable housing. And so,
Occupied.
yeah. You're right.
I think that's an ADU right there.
This was
Somebody else in the nest.
This was all at the behest of them. They are great partners. I will just say they're great partners. We partnered with them in a similar project in the northwest side of Provo a few years ago. This was actually one of the nests we built then. This was about 6 weeks later. And if the sound was up, you'd hear that's the mom and the dad. They were narrating it. The mom and the dad had moved in and already started to build their nest. And so this is one of our sustainability programs that people don't realize how many different things that we're a part of. So we wanted to make sure that you are. Also, as we talk about this multifaceted approach, I wanted to make sure that you understand what our goals are. We made the goal in our 2030 goal to increase renewable energy generation to 60% of our resource mix. To date, to give you an idea where we're at in 2024, at the end of last year, that was 49% of our generation came from low carbon resources. And so we're getting there. We're working there. This is a tough one for us because we have a lot of partners that we partner with to reach this goal that we continue to push. And there's some possible great opportunities in the horizon we're real excited about. So we hope next time we come before you to have some even better information on this as well. But to reach the 60% goal by 2030, we need to switch 11% of our total kilowatt hours from fossil fuels. So we still got some room to go, but we've made some great progress since we started this along the way. Our other goal was to reduce our carbon footprint by 15% from 2019 to 2030. To date, We reduced carbon emissions by 29%, or eliminating 119,500 metric tons of CO2 in Provo. So we are really proud of this. Charlie crunched a bunch of numbers, and we're really excited for the fact that we've not only met our goal, we've exceeded it many years in advance.
Could I ask a little bit about that? So tell us how you calculated that.
Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, that's calculated by taking our resource mix, the kilowatt hours that we now get from renewable resources, and how much coal power and natural gas power we no longer use because of those resources, and doing the offset of basically taking those totals. So
I just didn't, I mean, the reason I ask is I don't think we ever really had a very confident data point for what our carbon emissions were as a city prior.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that, I mean, that's not to deny that percentage change in terms of the mix, but I don't know that we know what our baseline emission rate was.
exactly from our 2019 resource mix. So this wouldn't have anything to do with like other carbon in the city. This is
It's
just
how we
based on
produce.
Right, yeah. So I guess what I'm just wanting to qualify is that that's what it represents, not necessarily what the entire city carbon.
This is just Provo Power. Yeah, this is our goal. This is what we have control over.
Right.
It's what we're responsible for. And because of that, we're excited. We exceeded the goal. And a lot's changed through this whole process. We talked about rates that were set, when we first started in 2011, trying to encourage rooftop solar, to 2016, when that rate was changed, to now. A lot's changed over the years, and it continues to change. And so that's one of the things that's been interesting to watch and to highlight. Let's see. I think am I going backwards? I am, sorry. So one of our programs that we want to highlight, that we haven't highlighted a lot lately, but is a big deal that I think we need to make sure that the message gets out there, is our Nature Shade program. Our tree planting program from 1994 to 2023 was one of the first demand side management programs in the state. I was excited to be part of that. We partnered up with UMPA, and a lot of people were asking us, what are you doing and why? And it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. Since that time in 1994, we have planted 33,653 trees. It's a lot of trees. You understand anything about trees, and I'm a huge tree hugger. They sequester a lot of carbon. They're one of the best ways to sequester carbon. And we're excited about the impact that that's had in our forest for a number of reasons. First and foremost, because a tree that sequesters the equivalent of about 65 cars emissions in its entire lifetime. And so, if you take all those trees over their lifetime, they're going to sequester about 2.19 million cars worth of emissions. That's significant. We've made some great strides in the last several years. One mature tree itself sequesters 48 pounds of CO2 in a year. And so with those trees, that's sequestering about 1.62 million pounds of CO2 per year. This is just one of our many programs where we're kind of having our multifaceted approach. Our biggest driver in this years ago was the urban heat island effect, trying to reduce that urban heat island effect in Provo. Urban areas tend to have a lot of hardscape, and the temperatures of those cities are a lot higher. This last year, we applied for and got a $370,000 grant to plant more trees throughout the city of Provo, specifically in underserved neighborhoods. So we're going to continue to add several thousand more trees, or a couple more thousand more trees throughout the city of Provo in the next 2 years. We've already planted 90 of those trees, but we have a lot more to go to spend that set $370,000. Another one of our approaches here is our shared solar program, which you're really familiar with. We talked about this last time. This is our 4 megawatt shared solar site in Spanish Fork. It's on their old landfill. So it's a perfect place to build something like this, property that's not being used for anything. Our numbers have risen. We're now at 128 residential customers, which equals 436 blocks for 87,200 kilowatt hours. That number continues to slowly climb. Recently, we've had some additions that we're excited about. At first, a couple months ago, we were a little nervous, but it looks like we were maybe a little impatient with some of our advertising efforts. And Becky actually was working on some just the last couple of days to try to encourage some of our customers that will really benefit from it to jump on board. And so, then of course, our 2 commercial customers are at 80% solar, which is equivalent to about 400,000 kilowatt hours per month. And so, if you want to, and this is for the public's sake, we have our shared solar calculator at renewchoice.com. If anybody wants to know, they can save money through shared solar because we think it's a great option. You just need to go there, and it can walk you through very simply how much money you would save if you bought however many blocks, and we covered that with you last time, so I don't need to go into that a lot. We also covered this last time as well. This is another one of our big, important, multifaceted approaches to state sustainability. Again, cleaning the air, the CO2 out of the air in Provo. A lot of these yard equipments that were traditionally gas are now getting switched over to electric and to battery operated ones. And that's part of our purpose for doing this. As you might remember, years ago, from 2009 to 2018, we had rebates for refrigerators, more efficient refrigerators, insulation, window rebates, all sorts of other things to help homeowners in that second tier, that 37% of people that waste a lot of power through their homes or their buildings to make their homes much more energy efficient. The problem with that program, like any else, is they kind of have a period where they start to decline. The people that were going to do it did it, and no one else seemed interested. And that's when we kind of decided we needed to switch a few years ago and say, okay, let's do something different where we can get it more bang for a buck. And this has been really, really popular. So we're really excited about that. But we issued just over 8,000 rebates from that time period in 2009 to 2018, which was $1.1 million that we did. Another step of our Provo's multifaceted approach is our Conserve Energy Conservation Program. And that is encouraging homeowners to move to ductless heat pumps. John Jarvis knows a little bit about this. We have several customers that have taken great advantage of that, and of course our water heaters, taking an old inefficient electric one to a new efficient electric one, or just going from gas to electric. And this program continues to get more and more popular as well. This is another one. Charlie could probably go into real depth in this one if you really wanted to, but we also developed our EV charging rates to encourage people to charge their cars when they could save money to doing it. If power is much more expensive at peak hours during the day, but if they waited till the evening when they got home, plug their car in at night, we'll give them a cheaper rate and encourage them to charge their cars at those times as well. Anything you want to add to that?
No, just that the commercial charging station rate is for new charging stations that may not have the right load factor to make a profit at our typical customer commercial charging rate. So this is to help new charging stations get off the ground and be profitable right off the bat until they could have enough customers to be profitable on our normal commercial rate.
Actually, we just met with a customer just the other day. Was it Monday? One of our big customers downtown that wants to install chargers for some of their residential customers in their building, and then also for those that are coming to businesses that are there as well. And they're gonna work towards this as well and probably get an advantage from it. And then of course you're familiar with our 80 megawatt solar power plant in Mona that we built several years ago. Right now, 1.9 cents is what it's costing us per kilowatt hour. Our rates are super low right now. It's incredible. It's been really good. And so we're really proud of that. But I'm going to turn the time over to Charlie now. She's going to walk through a lot of the calculations that we did. Just so you know, we've met with UMPA and their staff. We've talked with Rocky Mountain Power. What we did is we've taken their rates and their formulas and studied it with them, and then took our information and plugged it into their calculator so that we could be better comparative to what Rocky Mountain Power is doing. And Charlie can explain that to us.
All right, so that's just a comparison of the efficiency of utility-sized solar versus rooftop solar. You can harness a lot more of the sun's energy with these rotating solar panels. And what UMPA pays for solar is almost 2 cents, what he said, 1.98 cents. And then our retail rate to UMPA is 3.2 cents per kilowatt hour. And what we are paying rooftop solar customers for what they put back onto the grid is 6.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a less efficient resource that we're paying more money for, which that's fine. But that's what we were asked to look into for this presentation.
Charlie, sorry, I have a question about that. So one thing that I'm not sure I understand this correctly, but when we compare the market solar against rooftop solar, and that's what we're using as our price differentiation, why are we not comparing rooftop solar to fossil fuel costs? In other words, why are we not assuming that a rooftop solar owner is replacing fossil fuels, not replacing solar.
Well, solar comes on at the same time. It's a fairly easy one-to-one comparison, but we do have, later in the presentation, we did do that comparative, and I have those numbers for you of what it would be like if we were to replace solar with fossil
Okay,
fuels.
I mean, it seems, and what I've read is that's sort of the recommended practice, because presumably what they're doing, right, is increasing solar energy use in the city rather than fossil fuel use, instead of thinking of it as directly competing with other solar uses.
Yeah, that is one method for a qualifying facility to, if you were to buy solar. It's not typically used for rooftop solar, but again, we can go into it. And this is our rate for all fuel types from Rocky Mountain Power, or sorry, from UMPA. So 3.2 cents is what we pay for any type of energy.
Cool.
Was there another question? Oh, okay. So we looked at, again, efficiency of our different renewable energy sources, and this is the dollars that we, Provo Power, spend per pound of carbon sequestered or avoided by not buying fossil fuels. And because rooftop solar is our most expensive resource that we pay for, it is our least efficient from that metric because it costs more to us. So this is how much money we would be collecting from solar customers were they not producing solar. If we were to charge them full retail rates for their usage, we would receive about $1.2 million more annually. But that if we were to replace all of the kilowatt hours that rooftop solar produces, it would cost us $200,000 to buy that from UMPA. So that's a net loss of $1 million. And every hour that rooftop solar is produced, we're not collecting those rates. That money isn't going to the general fund. That's just the cost of doing business with having rooftop solar in your system. And that's $135,000 annually that the general fund does not collect based on rooftop solar. So in 2024, rooftop solar generated 1.7% of our total kilowatt hours. That is all production, not just what gets put on the grid. That's what they consume in their houses as well. They contribute 1.7% of our kilowatt hours. At current growth rates, we would see that in 2030 get to 2.5% of our total kilowatt hours, which is great, but it's not going to get us to that 11% goal. So we have to find other resources to incentivize if we want to meet that goal. When we did a survey of rooftop solar customers, the reasons why they did rooftop solar, nearly half said it was for financial reasons. And several were upset because the financial incentives they were promised by the solar companies hasn't exactly panned out the way they would like. So that's something that we've taken into consideration with this analysis as well. We want to make sure that if the customers in Provo are putting rooftop solar on their roofs, they're getting the correct information and that they're getting the value for the rooftop solar they install.
A lot of the complaints, unfortunately, from those 48%, they talked about spending that money for their system, being promised that they wouldn't have to pay a power bill. You've heard all the promises. And so when you read their comments, the sad part is we take the heat for it. They equate it to Provo Power. And so we try to get out of those customers and educate them and help them understand, we didn't make the deal like they did. And unfortunately, they weren't told the truth. They were told a bill of goods. And it's kind of sad because there's a lot of people that are really upset and frustrated about it. We try to get the message out. We try to all the time. We get people that call in regularly saying, hey, this is what I've been told with my solar customers, and we sit with them, we meet with them, explain to them. We try to help them see the benefits to the options and not. And I know Travis spent a lot of time, a lot of the customers just one-on-one, just trying to help them see the math so that they can make a good decision. Because It's not as if rooftop solar is a bad thing. You know, Jared and Charlotte go through some of these numbers on how much it costs, but you know, it's not a bad thing if you can afford it, you aren't giving a loan for it. But you know, if you're paying cash up front, it's great. You have a great return on investment, which I'll show here in a minute. But if you're not, and which is a lot of them, you know, then they get really upset because they invested quite a bit of money. And then, yeah, like you said, 30% was environmental, 10% because we're doing it for emergency preparedness, and the other was just kind of a combination.
So these are our current rates. I was able to do the calculations based on what we have production meters for our solar customers, so we know exactly how much they produce in total. That was part of the big data dump that I had to do because it's 15-minute incremental data for 1,300 customers for a year. That's a lot of lines of data. It takes a long time to export, but I was able to do the calculations, and between what rooftop solar customers save by not paying our retail rates and the credits they get back, for what they put back on the grid, their overall value is 9.2 cents per kilowatt hour produced. So even though we're only paying them 6.47 cents, they're saving 3 cents on top of that for everything that they don't have to pay into the city. So that's the overall benefit at our current rates. The average cost of rooftop solar is about $2,500 per kilowatt as of 2024. And the average, if they pay in cash. So rooftop can be a great financial decision if you have the correct numbers to begin with. So it's about $15,000 for the average size system in Provo to put on your house.
Still a lot better.
Yeah, it's rooftops.
Become much more efficient, much more.
Yeah, it's become much more affordable since the pioneers on the back row started doing it many years ago. So it takes about 10 years for them to make their money, to make that $15,000 back at their 9.2 cents benefit, avoiding paying retail rates and getting credits back. It takes about 10 years to break even. If they use about 1,400 kilowatt hours per month, which is the average usage for our solar rooftop solar customers. So again, they need to be kind of higher end users and size their system appropriately. They can get a break even in 10 years. And the lifetime of a solar array is 20 to 30 years. It does degrade in efficiency over time, but that still produces an overall ROI of $22,500, which isn't bad. It takes, 25 years to get there, but that's not bad. It is a benefit to rooftop solar customers at current rates. So this is the history of rooftop solar added customers onto our system. This is a year-by-year analysis. You can see in 2024 is one of our lowest years in the past 5-6 years. So we don't know how much of a chilling effect this will have if we were to change our credit. It's a fairly erratic pattern for how many new solar customers come on. Our pre-2016 rate averaged out to be about 9.7 cents because they got a tiered structure back in their credit. If they sold back 500 kilowatt hours, they would get about 7 cents. If they sold back 1,000 kilowatt hours, the next 500 would be at 10 cents. And if they sold 1,500 or more back, that addition above 1,000 would be about 12 cents. So they were getting a 1-to-1 on the retail rates, averaged out to about 9.7 cents. In 2016, the decision was made to grandfather current customers, and new customers got a 6.74 cent kilowatt hour credit. Our wholesale rate for solar has, within the past 2 years, 3 years, has fluctuated between they'll pay us to take it and up to 4 cents per kilowatt hour. More like 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But it was proposed that we match the solar credit to what solar is worth on the market. And so we set that the highest it's been in the past several years, which is 4 cents. The question is, do we continue incentivizing solar at more than its market value? So there have been questions about how do you actually calculate the value of solar? And this is a very simple, straightforward way, but we've gone into more depth to look at different ways we could calculate it and what those would look like.
Charlie,
Yes.
one question on the previous slide.
Mhm.
Any idea how to account for the high installation rates in 21 and 22?
I am not sure. I think that's because there were still federal credits available at that time and the federal credits were coming off. But I'm not entirely sure on the timing of that.
Federal and state credits.
Yeah.
Okay, came up at different times.
Yeah.
And people were remodeling homes, right? It was that pandemic after the pandemic era, and so I'm pretty sure you couldn't buy a house that was bigger, you had to pretty much stay in your house and remodel.
I'm also curious, oh, I'm sorry.
Counselor Ham.
I'm also curious about how you calculate, you said you estimated rooftop solar by 2030. I'm curious what you were using as your basis for that estimation.
Just an average of how many gets put on per year within the past 5 years. And rolling that forward, not super in depth, just kind of because it's so erratic, it's hard to forecast besides a rolling average.
So when it says 8.3 megawatt capacity, that's two Spanish Fork solar farms. That's 4 megawatt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to show you 3 different rates that we calculated. The first one, the wholesale energy credit, what we've been talking about this whole time, 4 cents, top of the market, what you can buy solar for. Then we looked at energy plus a capacity credit. How much do they shave our peak? How much are they contributing to us not having to size our system bigger? And I will go into how these were calculated a little bit more and break some numbers down for you. But that came out to about 4.5 cents. So rather than look at a straight kilowatt hour, this is also looking at kilowatts. How much are they saving us at peak time? And what does that mean on a per kilowatt hour basis? And that adds about 5 cents to our well, that's not how it was calculated, but it's 5 cents more than the 4 cent rate. And then what George was talking about, if we were to treat the rooftop solar on our system as if we were to calculate the avoided costs of generating our own non-solar power, how much are we avoiding? And if we were to treat our rooftop solar like a power plant we were buying power from, what are our avoided costs to not have to build out our own fossil fuel plant? And that comes out to 4.8 cents per kilowatt hour. We compared it to another study and it came out to about 4.9 cents, but that was after this presentation came together. So take that into consideration. It could be 4.8, it could be 4.9.
It's a comparative, but the plant that was just built last year in Nephi, another one that was up in Idaho.
Yeah.
And then one of them in Idaho ended up being 4.9 cents when we compared it to the Nephi.
So could I get clarification? So that last one, is that the capacity credit plus the power plant credit, or is that only the power plant credit?
That is only the power plant credit, but it takes into consideration the capacity. It's a more complicated equation, but no, it's not on top of the energy. There's different ways of calculating it.
So it doesn't include the capacity credit.
Capacity is a part of this calculation, but it's not like you just add a little bit on top of this one to get this one. It's just a different way of calculating it altogether, but it includes capacity within the formula.
The calculation, so this is with Rocky Power's structure in your calculations.
And does the capacity credit include transmission and distribution costs?
Yes, transmission, distribution, and generation. All right, so the wholesale energy credit, straightforward, top of the market, what's solar worth? We've been over this before. And we did some more calculations on what that would mean for solar customers. So you can see that the average bill could go up by $7.75 a month. Not nothing. The average kilowatt hour value, if you remember, I calculated it before, is about 9.2 cents. Is their overall value that they're getting at our current rates. It would drop to 8.2 cents. So they're losing an overall cent in value for the kilowatt hours they produce. Their estimated lifetime ROI at our averages numbers is still above 21,000. And I'll compare all three of them. So I won't go over all of this one by one for each of them, but so that just so you know the metrics we're kind of looking at with these different rates. So the capacity credit. Rocky Mountain Power, a couple of years ago, when they did their huge solar overhaul, they calculated their solar credits, taking into consideration how much peak does it shave, and what does that save as far as transmission, distribution, and generation. And they added that value. So we used Rocky Mountain Power's equation with Provo data. And it came out to 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And we talked to Rocky Mountain Power, and they said, so their rate is currently above 6 cents for solar credits. They said if they did that calculation today, it would also come out at about 4 cents for Rocky Mountain Power, because the price of solar has dropped. So we're piggybacking off of a huge study Rocky Mountain Power did and plugging our data into it to come to this rate. So that's that one. And you can see the numbers are slightly better because see the credit's slightly higher for our rooftop solar customers. Now the power plant credit. So this is a calculation for the avoided cost Provo would otherwise incur to generate the equivalent energy received from rooftop solar in a future power plant. If we were to have to build our own plant, what does rooftop solar save us as far as what it would cost us to generate that power? And that came out to about 4.8 cents. So this is a full avoided cost study that is typically only afforded when you're buying directly from a power plant. It's not typically used for rooftop solar. This is required by PURPA for qualifying facilities. That's how that rate is calculated. And again, slightly better for the rooftop solar customers, because it's slightly higher. So you'll look at all of those three next to each other. At all three of these price points, the average bill would increase by $5 to $8. The average ROI is still above $21,000 if they size their system correctly and they don't finance their panels. And the overall benefit to Provo Power's revenue is between $75,000 and $100,000. Not huge, not nothing. So those were the different rates we went into with a lot of data. Wanted to make sure we answered the questions that were raised on how are we actually calculating this and what is most fair to the solar customers as well as the other residential customers in Provo.
Just so you know, we have, we are 31 customers away from 40,000 customers in Provo.
Oh, that's been a goal.
That's kind of been a goal of ours for a while. We should reach that in the next few weeks, we think.
Next few weeks.
And there's a party over it.
Yeah.
We are looking into celebrating that 40th customer, you know, with a gift bag and whatever.
Just surprise them at their house.
Yeah, that has been something that we've watched for years, and you know, Provo continues to grow. There's, you know, the big development up north of Riverwoods, probably in that area, or the mid-square, probably gonna happen.
Yeah, I want you to surprise them at their house with something and videotape it.
Yeah, we are. We have some fun with it. We've been looking to report it.
Put it on your social media pages so we can see it.
Yeah, we will.
Right, so we have some possible options moving forward. Again, whatever you decide, we're great. We'll be fine, but here are the possible options. We can leave it. Pretend none of this ever happened. Just say, fine, great. We can change the rate for all post 2016 customers. It is within their contract that the rate may change. They were informed if they actually watched the videos and read the paperwork, they would know, we say it might change, so. There is that. We could grandfather their current customers, say, hey, we want them to retain their ROI. Some of these people bought their systems back in 2017. It was more expensive then. Like, maybe let's be kind to those people who had different expectations. That is also an option. And we've given you 3 price points that we think are fair and within the realm of reality, I guess, for what solar is actually worth. And those were those 3 rates we put forward.
And those are based on questions we received, concerns that we've been given. We've tried to encapsulate all of that information and all that data into these rates so that it is fair to both sides.
Again, there was a lot of data going back and forth between you and PA, getting that 15-minute data for this as well. It's just, we really tried to do our due diligence to make sure that we were answering the questions.
Another thing too, real quick, just so you know, we've been asked to study it, right? I will just say this. In 2016, there was no study done. There was very little research done. It came down to, after it was vetoed by the mayor, it came down to a citizen committee that came up with the rate that we were told not everybody was happy. What we've done this time is we have gone out, we've studied, we've looked at Rocky Mountain Power, we've looked at other local utilities, and then we did sit down with our rate specialist, Dave Berg, who does it when is the only time that we really spend any money on a rate study is when we'll be doing one again soon because they're expensive. And we go to him and he goes through all of our rates and we determine where they're at and where they should be. But we sat down with him recently and he said, these are spot on. So this is exactly what I would recommend anybody to do. And so just so you know, we got his, what do you call it, seal of approval.
Yeah.
And so, which to us is a big deal because any of you have been to the UMPA meetings, he always comes, he'll be there again in March. Dave is an incredibly smart guy. He is the ultimate in power rate nerd, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, so he looked over all of our equations, sat down, poured over the spreadsheets, and he said he would be fine with any of these. He feels the 4 cent is most closely aligned with reality and what other municipalities would base it on, but that these are 3 very legitimate ways of calculating the rate.
I remember correctly, he did say that power plant credit is something that it's nobody weird.
Yeah.
It's just not something that's considered in their industry, you know, when you're looking at those of what it costs, everything else that's ever done. So that's why I kind of stopped there. It's a recommendation.
Councilor Handley has a question.
Yeah, I in my reading that that has not been my impression that it's that rare. So I mean, I'm certainly inclined to want to give as maximum credit for the benefits that rooftop solar brings to the city. So at the very least, it seems like we need to move to number 2, but I certainly would favor anything higher than that because and for those reasons, but also because we're talking about a 40% bump or drop to all of our citizens very immediately, which is quite dramatic. But I really appreciate all the work you've done, both of you have done. I know I met with both of you and you, you know, patiently listened to my many questions and emails.
There's no patience.
Well,
you actually had a good time.
I did. I agree. I still don't understand what problem we're trying to solve other than this sort of perception of subsidy. And I don't sense from what's been presented that we have a clear idea of how this policy change affects our goals in the conservation and resiliency plan. And that is not to deny any of the things that you described that we've done so well. I think I celebrate them as much as you do. And I want the public to know that story as much as you do, but I don't see how this policy change is consistent with all those other, and I know what you're about to say, but I don't like it. I don't like the idea for this reason. I think it's a terrible idea to use the revenue from rooftop solar increase and then directly pit them as a competitor with our shared solar. They are not our
enemies, there are allies, and I don't like the idea of using that money. We have rec money to use for this sort of thing. We make, as far as I understand, about $300,000 a year from renewable energy credit money to be used for sustainability purposes in the city. But if we say we're going to start charging rooftop solar this much more, and then we're going to directly use it against them for competition, I don't like that idea. I think we have to think about the fact that these folks have, in the intervening years, built 2 solar farms or the equivalent in our city, and that the future is going to be that they're going to have batteries, they're going to be generating power with us. So I want to see an aggressive program about helping incentivize batteries. I want to see an aggressive program about incentivizing more shared solar, because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of that program and want to see that succeed. That's lost revenue, right? That's lost revenue to the city, because that's direct. At least I know I'm paying on top of my utility bill. I'm paying for that program because I believe in it so much. So, and finally, I'll just say that from my conversations with others, experts in the field, especially Utah Clean Energy, if we're going to make any change, it seems to me we have to do at least 2 things. We grandfather everybody, and then every year you adjust the rate. Because if you don't have a set method of how you're going to do this every single year, it seems like it immediately becomes outdated within a year, in my mind. So there seems to be a need for a regular review of the pricing to make sure that we're adjusting it correctly, and then giving people that at least 10-year window where they have time to recoup their investments that they've made. I understand that they signed a piece of paper that said that they were subject to that, but their financial planning has been based on that. And you know, I just think we're creating a political problem for $100,000 and $150,000 difference that we're not hurting for. You know, I just don't like the perception that we're creating that there's something wrong with what they've done. We believe that we have a superior product, but I don't like the idea of treating them as our competitors. I think we have to figure out a way to continually invite them to be partners with us, and that, you know, if we're getting outbid by rooftop solar companies, then let's go all out on that and fix that problem before we contemplate something this dramatic. So I'm just not ready to make the adjustment until we see a bigger package of how we're going to spend our money and our efforts on incentivizing batteries and incentivizing shared solar, so that we correct what is clearly a race that we're losing big time, 10-1. I mean, we're completely outpaced by rooftop solar. And I think that's a communication problem that we need to address. So that's I guess the sum of my feelings on it.
Okay, anybody else have comments? Did you want to say something, Scott?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I appreciate that. I do. That's why when I started out, I talked about, there's 2 sides here. There's a sustainability side, there's a fiscal responsibility side. I don't think that necessarily one isn't bad, neither of them are bad, right? We want to be as sustainable as we can. We're also required to be as fiscally smart as we can. We work really hard with that. And we are looking at these programs. We're looking at budgeting the shared solar program. We're working with UMPA right now, looking at EV charging station rebates for homeowners, to install EV chargers on their homes. We're starting, I just say starting because I don't want to get anybody excited, because right now I'm not sure the time is right. Like I said, 2011, 2016, 2025 are completely different times. We're not quite sure that the battery portion is where it needs to be to make it cost effective. And that's our battle all the time. What's the most efficient and what's the most cost effective? And so you have to forgive us, because we do think that. And that's why we pivot to these other programs and say, look, as far as, sequestering carbon and getting carbon out of our air, some of these other programs are much more efficient, and much more cost effective. So that in our mind, in our businessman mind, okay, let's pivot to those. But that's the tough decision that, you have to make is where do you lie with this? Is it sustainability? Is it fiscal responsibility? Is it a mix of both? And that's why we provided all of these options, including that last one, you know, to use whatever revenue is saved to these other programs. We do have that money that comes in every year that we continue to pour into these rebate programs. And continue to prepare for these other programs that we want to buttress as well.
Do you see though how that, you know, from the point of view of a rooftop solar owner, you say, we're gonna start charging you 40% more, and we're gonna use that money to get greener as a city. And they're like, we just spent $15,000 doing that for you guys. Why would you take more money from us in that way? And it immediately pits them as a competitor with us. And I just,
I get that.
I think
we
we
don't
should.
want to do that. We're getting it from the other side, right? We're getting it from the other side where it's a property owner, homeowner on a fixed income. And they're saying, why am I paying for this? If I can't afford it and I don't have it and I'm not receiving the benefit. And we can argue what benefit they are receiving, because if the air is being cleaned by those that have rooftop solar more, that is a benefit to them. One of the challenges that we face, and we were in a meeting a month or two ago, you know, with customer service and others saying, we are getting these homeowners that are on a very tight fixed income, Social Security, they Power demand, it was there. One of our employees presented a program, what can Provo Power do to help these people? And so, you know, we're caught between both.
Well,
we want to do the best for both, and that's where we stand.
Does somebody else have any questions?
I wasn't done.
No, well, you've spoken twice now, or before you've spoken
Okay,
once.
well, what's the rule? Can I not ask a follow-up question?
Okay.
The renewable energy credit, why not use that for helping people on fixed incomes? Why not use that to cover the 150,000? I don't know.
Sure.
Those are just.
There are lots of options that we've discussed. That's why I say there's a lot of things that we can do. There's a lot of positive things. That's the message we're trying to get across. We are not anti-rooftop solar. We aren't. We don't want to be perceived as that. You know, this was a question that was asked of us, and we gathered all the data and tried to provide it as fairly as we possibly can. And you get to make the tough decision. And I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because you have to, because it is a tough decision. We understand that. And we're getting punched from both sides. And we're just trying to represent all 40,000 of our customers as best as we can. And hopefully, you know, through this, we've been able to do that for you. I just wanted to just a couple quick reminders, you know, some of the things that we covered, but again, you know, reliability, sustainability, and fiscally responsible. Those are things that we're going for. That's our goal. Whatever you can do to help us maintain that goal, we would love to be a part of it. So our goal is always to be the most efficient, cost effective, and work on that often. So but I'm sorry, was there more questions?
Councilor Whipple.
Okay, I've got a little series of questions here. First is just a clarification. Early on, you were talking about the return on investment was about 10 years. Was that just for the cash buyers only? Is the return on investment a longer period of time for those who have to finance?
Yeah, it takes about 5 years longer if you finance it.
Okay. And then you talked about, we've got this projection going into the future, how much the rooftop solar will be reducing the CO2 emissions. It's a less than 1% is what you're expecting. But given that we have relatively little control over the emissions from automobiles, we really can focus on the station area or the station source or house sources. Losing my terms, I'm so sorry. Yeah, the stationary sources. And rooftop solar seems to be within that. I don't want to reduce or kick that out because I don't really see how we make up other stationary sources reductions.
Well, if we got everyone on a heat pump, that would be great. But
that would be amazing. I would love
Got more
that.
people driving hybrids or electric vehicles. You know, that's some of the programs that we keep pushing very hard because those are the much more cost efficient ones and much more effective. And
yeah, but I don't want to lose that 0.8% because it seems like we need to be doing all of the things that we can get. The next one is, are we looking at doing programs to help get these battery arrays to go with the solar arrays? Because my understanding is that if we have that bank of batteries with the rooftop solar, then that levels our duck curve. It actually becomes a really useful thing to the city, probably much more useful than it is right now.
yeah, solar with battery would do a lot more to shave our peak.
And would if our rooftop solars all had batteries, how would that compare to the solar farm, which doesn't have that same kind of battery situation? Like, would it be better for our system?
Possibly, it's just batteries are very expensive. You're doubling the cost of your solar system if you add even 2 kilowatts of battery storage to your house.
That's why I say it's very expensive right now to do that. That's why we're a little hesitant to go out with any type of rebates or whatever right now, because it just doesn't financially make sense. It's so expensive.
No, we don't want to do the rebates to help with that right now because we know it's just too expensive for people to do, even if we offered some help. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's like,
Because honestly, these people generally aren't making the best financial decisions anyway to get rooftop solar, right? Because they're doing it for idealistic reasons instead of strictly financial ones. And since they're not doing it out of like just that rational fiscal reason, I would imagine that a lot of them would be happy to do batteries as well, if they could make it work. Because I think that would be overall good for the system from everything that I've been reading. It takes away these weird peaks that rooftop solar creates. And I would like to see what we can do to make the entire system more resilient, right? You know, build in all of those redundancies. And it seems like batteries is a good way to do that. The last thing that I was thinking about is that this really is a matter of policy, right? As a council, this is our responsibility to make decisions if we wanted to help subsidize super fixed income elderly persons. We could do that as a policy decision, right? And if we want to continue to support this, then that's also a policy decision. And I think there's value to that. I like the idea that we are encouraging people who are trying to contribute solutions, and they're doing so at great personal cost. If we were to do any changes that you've proposed here, I think the most responsible thing to do would be to grandfather in all of the current customers and then set your number 2 rate going forward with the provision that that rate has to be recalculated every year so that it's current. Right now, we've had with that 6.7 rate, one that's, you know, a little bit higher than what we're paying, but I don't want, because prices always change. I think it would be very unjust if at some point we were paying our rooftop solar far less than we're paying for our other energy sources. And I don't want to set up a situation in which that would be the situation. Although I guess if that were the case, then they would be really happy to have their rooftop solar because they wouldn't be paying those much higher prices. And I know that there are lots of politics with mining of lithium and things like that, but battery prices are going down. I don't know how quickly they're going down, but if we could look at ways to help incentivize getting those walls or banks of batteries to go with rooftop solar, I think that's good for our system as a whole. And I would love that. And that's my bit. Councilor Christensen.
So if you, first of all, being on the energy board and listening to this whole presentation before, we definitely want our municipal power to be paying attention to costs. So you've done a remarkable job there and really good work here. If you looked up like those grandfathered and the original people, you would see my face on a poster. I'm like one of the 2014, I put in a solar array, I put in house batteries, I went all out. And every time I hear people talk about, well, you got to question their judgment there. I have to tell you, I'm delighted with the choice that I made. If the state came to us and said, as a council, hey, I'm not sure we need Provo power. We can give you power at half that. And why don't you just let them go because they're too expensive? I would say, hey, I'm interested in a portion of that, but there's no way I'm letting these folks go. I like the sustainability, not just from an environmental standpoint. I also like the self-reliance of having our own power as a city. I like having my own power as a member of this community. And I feel very strongly that, again, I realize I'm speaking for myself, but we've got a lot of people who have given us 2 Spanish forks. And if we could help get them batteries, it would shave those, help shave those peak times. So as an energy board, I get the math, but from a policy standpoint, I'm not looking at this as a subsidy. I'm looking at this as an incentive, as an investment. And so I would not make the recommendation that we, change the grandfathering. Is it going to upset me by that amount? Yeah, I'm going to be fine. And there are people that this will have a big impact on, people who were planning on that amount. So if we were going to make changes, I would suggest we do it before people make the investment and then let them know it's going to change. Then they can go in eyes wide open. And I still would not want to discourage it because this is a good thing. And I share the concern that we're pitting our solar farm against, people who have rooftop solar. And that's the last message I would want to say from a policy standpoint that I want to send. I want self-reliant households, people who are thinking about contributing, and I see this as a great contribution. So I appreciate all the math that's gone into this, and it helps me make the decision. And the decision I would make is I would not make these reductions going forward. I think that's different because people could go in and they could actually figure in these new rates into the investments they would make. But I can tell you as a rooftop solar user, it's one of the best things that we've done, not just for the environment, not just for our own family sustainability, but also I think for the city. Every time I drive up the hill and see those panels on my house, I feel like doing my part and I'm not even home. So I wouldn't want to send any message to that. So what you've brought is the fiscal, and I'm telling you, you've done excellent work on that. I'm not as compelled by the fiscal as I am the policy of let's do more to encourage people, not less.
I want to apologize, Craig, if it made it sound like I was casting aspersions on your judgment.
No, you're one of
The reason I said that is, as a divorce attorney, I've had several cases in which the debt related to solar panels was something that had to be allocated.
Yeah.
It was a real problem. I even had one case where the parties had moved, and the new owners didn't want the solar panels, so they had to pay to take the solar panels off, and then they were going to have to pay another $8,000 to have them reinstalled on the new place. Really, they just ended up losing $10,000 and had a pile of solar panels that are not hooked up to anything. So there are many people who get talked into it because there's certainly salesmen who are making a pitch. So if we do this change going to a lower rate going forward, I think it would be useful to say we have this rate and it will be recalculated every year so that when people come in and they've been sold this wonderful vision, we can say, this is what your time for paying this off is, your ROI under this current rate. There is a very good chance this rate will change in a year, and we can't guarantee that it's up or down. That may help prevent some of the people that I've worked with as clients from getting stuck in a bad situation. Because people who do have the capacity to pay a larger amount or not have to finance it, they'll be fine knowing that there are those fluctuations. I do want to do what we can for consumer protection. So again, I apologize, and I'm very happy that you love your solar panels. Councilor Bogdan.
But from what I understand, that's what they did back in 2016, right? They said everybody prior is grandfathered in. Everybody knew you have that risk of losing that 6.7 cents from here on out. So what I'm hearing you say is the same thing that was proposed back in 2016. They did the same thing with the same assumptions that these people are not guaranteed that 6.7 cents for the last 10 years, almost 10 years, 9 years. They have not been guaranteed that. And so to me, I'm like, that's the contract you entered into. If we went ahead and reduced that, we're not being the bad guys, because the same thing you're saying, this was in all of your stuff, yeah, disclosures and stuff before. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of them, like we talked about prior to the LLC thing, that just didn't understand it or didn't care or didn't remember. But I don't see the difference in now restarting the clock again when we did that 9 years ago.
The way I see the difference is that we actually didn't change the rate for 10 years. So people relied on it and thought that it's actually just not going to change, even though there was that one line when they signed up for it. And so if what we're committing to is to revisiting it every year, like actually having a real check on it, and possibly, I don't know how volatile our energy market is right now. Do you expect that we would need to make modest adjustments every year, even if it's like 0.2 cents or something like that?
If you go that much, yes, possibly so. But again, it's anywhere from, really 1.9 cents to 3, maybe up to 3.5. But it hasn't adjusted, I guess, when you're talking cents, it doesn't seem like a lot anyways. From year to year, if you go that route, what we'd like to say is, okay, what's the trigger point?
Right.
For that happening, and where do we start it up? Is it gonna be the 4 cents? Is it gonna be, which number do you want to use? And maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, and which methodology do we want to ascribe to when we calculate the rate as well? Because that's kind of a policy decision as well. But what is the worth of solar to you based on how you calculate it? And
You're going to say, what's the worth of souls?
It is great.
It is great. Yeah. That's not our responsibility.
Very good.
Scott, could you advance to your recommendation slide again? I think you,
this one right here.
No, all the way to the end. The subtitle is right there. Because I don't think you advanced all the way to the end based on material you're given. Could you speak to subsidy versus incentive?
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't cover. I wanted to do.
Right.
That's one of the things we've been beat up. That's why when I say we're getting punched from both sides, if you're a rooftop solar customer, you think that it's an incentive because you feel like you are making these contributions to the community. If you're on that other end and you're on that fixed income, you're saying, hey, you're subsidizing these guys and you're not subsidizing me. And that's what we've heard from both sides. That's where that comparative comes in. And that's what we've talked a lot about over the last several months is, wow, one side in some cases say, hey, it can only be incentive, and others say it can only be subsidy. That's why we say, there's good on both sides.
And if you see it as a subsidy, then it feels like there's more of a responsibility to use that subsidy for the other residents of Provo. But if you're no longer subsidizing this program, how are you then benefiting everybody else with that money you're not saving?
And that subsidy, did I read somewhere, is in the $4 to $5 range per year?
Year.
Okay.
Yeah, the subsidy's minuscule. When we had this discussion on the sustainability committee, and that hey, it's only this amount, and it's equivalent to the size of a large French fry or something. That's great, but to that lady living on Social Security, that's everything to her, and we've heard from them, and so it's, we try to be sympathetic and empathetic to all sides, because we're with you, George, all of you. we're not here to say we're anti rooftop solar. We're not. It's an important part of our system. We always go back to what's most cost efficient and what's most efficient, what's most cost effective.
So we've presented to you what financially, what is the actual value of rooftop solar, but you as a council have to decide what's the social value of rooftop solar and how much sense do you add to that 4 cent to quantify that for our citizens.
We're not good at that
I don't do feelings.
math.
I'll go in there and you. I think rooftop solar is great. I think anybody, it's the self-sustainability is what I really love. You know, you can, especially if you can get the batteries to work. I want to talk to you about your batteries. But and back in the day, when you got the state rebate and the federal rebate and you paid for cash, that made financial sense. I talked to a number of people that own solar companies and they don't even sell in Utah because they say doesn't make any sense. It'd be foolish to buy it from us. Like, your power is so cheap. In the city of Provo. And so that was interesting.
That's my son.
Yeah.
I told you that.
And I'm worried that, like, I have heard too from they've generally been elderly people from what I can tell from the emails. That, I mean, they're huge buyers of those, right? So one of my issues is incentivizing something that if the market dictates it's good for you, it's good for you. We shouldn't be incentivizing something to make it usable for them. Like if we're really about the carbon emissions, it's not big enough bang for the buck individually compared to our other options for sequestering carbon and for taking care of that issue, if you're being honest about it. But the numbers are small. There's no doubt about that. It's not really about the numbers for me, it's just about the principle, I guess. And one of my goals on council has been to, make things pay for themselves. And I think this is a personal decision. People they're not consulting their neighbors, they're not consulting other residents. They're making a personal decision for themselves. And so it should stand up on its own that way. I agree with Becky that the agreement was already made in 2016 where those were grandfathered in. And I like the idea of doing the year-to-year change from now on. I think that's a great idea. Since you have the calculation now. And I don't know what you're saying, like it's triggering something or if it's doable to just do it year by year. I'm sure it would change very minusculely, but make people feel that we're being on top of it. Yeah, I think about the bang for the buck. I just think there's more efficient, cheaper ways to minimize carbon emissions and to do environmentally sustainable things. So I would go down, I would change the price to something more in line with what other municipalities are doing and with the realities of the costs.
And who would you change that for, just to be clear?
I would change it for everyone from 2016 on. And if there wasn't the votes for that, then just change it from now on. Councilor Hanley.
I think, I'll just make a comment and then I think I'll make a motion, but I think, what Charlie indicated is that we need to get some clarity about what we decide is going to be our method. I mean, I feel very strongly that we should do it regularly, and I do think that could be the difference between what Becky and Rachel were saying. I mean, I think if we make it clear that we're going to be adjusting the rate, looking at it at least every year, maybe we don't adjust it every year, but we're going to look at it every year using the same method, and that everybody is grandfathered from that point forward, so that there are 10-year limit or something like that. I've read that is not an unusual practice, and that recognizes the issue of return on investment for rooftop solar owners, and also recognize, I mean, that's one thing I feel we need to figure out. I don't think we're ready to do that right now. I also want this to be a part of a package where we have some pretty serious discussions about incentivizing other things more aggressively than just rooftop solar. I think we should keep a gentle incentive there for rooftop solar, but I think we should be more aggressive on shared solar and on batteries so that we really get what we want. Like I say, I think the rooftop solar battle's already been lost. If that was a battle to begin with, they like I say, you know, they outnumber us pretty significantly. So it doesn't make any sense anymore to start saying, well, let's try to slow them down. They're doing an enormous amount of investment in our community. And I think we ought to just recognize that reality and find out ways to harness that for the benefit of the city. This feels to me like a longer conversation than I'm ready to vote on tonight. So I would move that we postpone this discussion and that we bring it back to the council at a future work meeting to hammer out, you know, the different methodologies that we want to consider for an annual review, and have more substantive conversation about grandfathering and have more substantive conversations about battery incentives and what's the other shared solar incentives. Because I just don't feel like unless we have a serious plan to get from 130 shared solar to 1,300. I mean, I'd love to get 1,300 shared solar people in Provo within a year. You know, I'd like to see that tripled within 2 years. I mean, I don't know what it takes. I know we don't know yet. But I think there are solutions out there. And like I say, I think we have renewable energy credit money that we could consider using in creative ways to make that happen. Then that feels to me like a sort of more balanced discussion. I think that would be more reassuring to our public that we're not pitting one group against another. We're seeing this as a partnership. And then I think we're going to have a huge political headache because of the issue of perception, which fair or unfair, I think is going to be the reality if we don't handle this a little more carefully and reassure our public that we've thought through what our methodology is. We've got a clear sense of how we're going to do that every year and move forward. So my motion would be to include all those requests and delay this vote until such time as we have a more comprehensive package to look at. If that was clear enough.
Does anybody want a second though?
I have a question. So Brian, how does that work where it's been noticed for tonight? If the motion is to table it.
We can continue beforehand. We just in the evening meeting, we just announced the item's been continued. As a matter of practice, we have often made that announcement at the very beginning of the meeting, so that if somebody is there for public comment, they know that it won't be heard. They don't wait until the item comes up to find that out.
So I would second that, because I think it does make sense. There are a lot of different perspectives on this, and I think it's worth.
Any discussion on the motion, Councilor Whipple?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason that we're here now is because the 6.7 cents to 4.5 cents is a big jump. And that's why I think it would be good to do that annual review. And if the difference is 0.5 cent, or I don't know what the appropriate level is, but that I would want it to be a modest enough change that you're not really throwing off people's budgets who are doing the rooftop solar. And so having modest changes that are appropriate every year, I think would be beneficial to them, but also to you, so that you don't get this big gap that we're talking about right now. And so having the time for you to assess what that appropriate amount is to trigger the change, I think would be helpful. How much time do you think would be necessary? Because I like better that we have a fixed date to come back instead of a date uncertain.
I could come back to you tomorrow, but.
You are amazing.
But as far as if we were to put together a whole comprehensive package and you guys wanted to propose different incentives or subsidies or rebate programs, that would take more discussion. So I guess it depends on what's on the table. If we're just asking what would trigger a rate change, that's fairly easy to calculate. Oh, with the outside of this percentage change, this year we're going to change the rate. Like, that's fairly easy to determine. But if you want to come back with a whole slew of options for sustainability within Provo, that would probably take maybe a couple months for us to talk to all the stakeholders and come up with a plan.
Yeah, you're talking about different methodologies, talking about grandfathering and the different kinds of incentives that we can also start working on towards. And then I also heard, what would that modest annual changes be? That's a pretty substantial ask.
Okay, and I think George and I may have had a point of divergence, because I was thinking that from now on, if there's a change in rate, the rate changes, but it sounded like you were looking at whatever rate you sign up for, you get to keep that rate for 10 years, even if it changes year by year.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. I mean, that's the discussion we need to have, though.
That sounds like a nightmare for our customer service ability. Our Amanda is going to shoot you.
They're reporting what I've read other cities doing, so
Okay.
I don't pretend to know what the bureaucratic challenges might be, but my motion is that we need time to sort that out.
Thank you.
I feel like we've had plenty of time with this. We've delayed it once. It's gone through multiple committees and boards. I think that we know what we need to know now. I think thinking of other subsidies, and because we do not subsidies, but rebates or different incentives. We're doing those all the time. And that's another thing. We'll go back to the sustainability committee and you guys will come up with new ones and come through. I don't believe that it needs to be legislated, so to speak. I think that my understanding with rate changes is we've done this before on something, I feel like. But like you mentioned, it changes within so much and then we do the full calculation again and the rate changes. So I think that's also pretty straightforward too.
One point of clarification is the Sustainability Committee did recommend that we take more time on this. Actually, you didn't mention that, but they did not support this particular, the original 4-cent proposal. They said that we should take more time on it. So
yeah, we knew that it was in the
Right, but they're just a recommending body.
Yeah,
not a legislative body.
it just wasn't mentioned.
Councilor Garrett.
I do like the idea of an annual review and adjustment, being as transparent as possible to those who are making these decisions. And I would, in that case of an annual review, I would err as generously as possible on the side of grandfathering, so that people would know what their expectations are and be able to make those decisions based on data.
It's also just like, I mean, we don't get a say in what our prices are for energy. Like they are what they are. Ours go up and down, whether it's water or energy. I think it's interesting that we're so worried about making sure they stay the same, but none of the rest of the population stays the same.
Well, to be clear, I'm not proposing that they stay the same. I'm proposing that we review them every year and that we decide what the methodology is for.
But you said you wanted to keep them on that for the 10 years and then review the next.
Because of the I'm just saying I think that's a standard practice in rooftop solar policy, because of the investment that citizens are making, that it helps them make that decision clear-eyed, that they can understand what their rates are going to be for over the term of their investment. So that's an unusual thing. I mean, I suppose if there were the equivalent of some sort of water production capacity in the house, that would be the equivalent of producing water, then you would have something similar. But this is an unusual technology that allows a home to produce its own energy, and we ought to allow people who want to make that decision to I mean, I'm sympathetic to all the cases you and Rachel just shared, I think precisely for that reason, I think we want to be super transparent about what our rates are going to be, what our process and methodology is going to be about determining them, and then give them the opportunity to have the confidence moving forward that they know what their rate is going to be going into the future. It seems like one really good way to sort of protect them from abuse.
I don't necessarily agree with that. On protection from abuse, I mean, they're adults. They know what they're signing. They may have gotten swindled a little bit. But to me, they're going into this knowing this rate can change at any time. They're gonna go into it when they invest in solar, knowing that this rate can change at any time. So if they're truly doing this for the environment, to me, they're gonna realize that's what it is, which 30% of them are doing that for. The other 40–50% are doing it for cost effectiveness, which they're finding out is not necessarily the case with rooftop units. So we've gotten plenty of emails stating that they've kind of been swindled. Now these older people have to take other jobs in order to provide for something that they didn't necessarily understand what they were getting into. So to me, if you provide a variable rate and they know that up front and they can't afford it, then hopefully they can do some other options like the solar farm or something that they can do it. I'm for doing it every year and having that trigger point, but I am for doing it from 2016 forward because I think that we've been very transparent with that. And I can't control every single person and their loans and their financial aspects. We can only just be honest and upfront. This is what it takes to do that. And I don't want to say, hey, people, we're going to incentivize a battery that is probably, to me, it would seem like technology, like the cell phone is going to be obsolete in 2 years. I don't necessarily want to do that either. I think once they get to that point where the batteries are, a good price point and they're going to be stable and you can have them for years, I think that would be something that I would look at. But right now, I think we're it's too early. And I think that I'm ready to make my decision.
Vote.
All right, we'll take a vote.
So
Councilor
the motion on the table is?
to delay it. Do you have a fixed time?
And
Yeah, can we get a fixed time?
Well,
2 months?
I was gonna say, let me jump in before you ask for fixed time, because I want to clarify something, because I don't think there's an ask for you.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think that I heard that what the motion I heard was delay this for a future work session for the council to come back and the council to keep debating the questions that you're debating right now until you come up with guidance to give them about what they need.
I think that's why.
So as I'm interpreting the motion right now, I don't think they have any homework. So I want to clarify if that's not true.
I thought I was giving them homework on the triggers for changing the rate every year.
Well, you raised that, but the motion.
That
was
wasn't
from
in the
George.
motion. Okay.
So you raised that as a question, but it hasn't even been decided, to George's point about deciding about mechanisms, it hasn't even been decided by a majority that that's a mechanism
I'm
that you
fine
want
with
to
that.
impose.
I'm fine with that. And I will gladly do some work with that. But I would want to be in conversation with Scott and Charlie about what we're learning or what we're thinking. So for example, if we're exploring the possibility of batteries, I'm gonna want to consult with them. So that's the only homework I would ask, is that they'll let me into their office.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting, I'm sure
can give you a
Scott will
free
be
drink.
more than happy to answer questions. I think there was,
That's fair.
there was a
That's fair.
lack of clarity about whether the next work session was for them to come report on something or for you to come back and continue your debate about what you.
But that being said, if they have ideas that they want to share, that of course we I don't want this to be a
We'll be
partnership.
working on stuff.
Yeah.
We will.
Take a vote. Councilor Bogdan,
No.
Councilor Henley,
Yes.
Councilor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilor McKay, no, Councilor Whipple,
Yes.
Councilor Nolan.
I don't know why I thought I had my own mic. Gonna pass. Yes.
Councilor Christensen.
Yes.
All right, for delaying.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, 5-2. It passed. All right, so now we go to a closed session. Brian, can you?
Yes, just really briefly, we have one or two items to talk to you about that deal with current or pending litigation. So that is an approved reason for a closed meeting for the appropriate for motion to close at this time.
I move that we close the meeting.
Second,
We'll take a vote. Counselor Bogdan?
Yes.
Counselor Henry?
Yes.
Counselor Garrett?
Yes.
Counselor Fifte? Yes. Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Hogan?
Yes.
Yes.
We're okay.